Welcome to the City of Bellevue regular City Council meeting for October 18th, 2021. I wanted to take a brief moment. A number of our council members asked that I speak to the passing of former Secretary of State and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Colin Powell. Secretary Powell honorably served this country for decades and spanned a number of roles from soldier to diplomat. He also represented a number of firsts, including being the first Black Secretary of State. So on behalf of the City of Bellevue, I would like to offer our condolences to his family. Clerk, could you please do the roll call?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Robinson?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Neuenhouse?
Here.
Councilmember Barksdale?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Robertson?
I'm here.
Councilmember Stokes?
Here.
And Councilmember Zahn?
Here.
Thank you.
Councilmember Robertson, could you please lead us in the flag salute?
Certainly. Please join me as we salute our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for oral communications?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Robinson. There are 8 individuals signed up this evening for oral communications. And with that, I will call the first speaker, who is Susan Pappalardo. Ms. Pappalardo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Your time begins now.
Good evening, council members. My name is Susan Pappalardo, and I live in Kirkland, Washington, and I'm the co-founder and board president of Splash Forward. On behalf of Splash Forward and the wide range of community stakeholders we represent, I share these comments as you review tonight's recommendations for the preferred aquatic facility concept plan, site, and next steps. I hope you have enjoyed hearing from the diverse community members with their personal stories around the importance of having access to aquatics and their strong support for a new public aquatic facility in Bellevue. I have sent you additional letters of support from organizations that are in your council packet. Tonight, Park staff presents a unified facility concept plan that we have refined together over the past year at our weekly meetings. The 130,000 square foot facility encompasses the hopes and dreams of all user groups to meet today's needs and for generations to come. The preferred site recommendation of Bellevue Airfield Park is exciting because of the opportunities it creates not only in the breadth of complementary recreational and fitness scenarios, but also in the process to update the 2012 master plan. The process invites the public in, and the greatest opportunities will be explored to integrate both indoor and outdoor uses unique to this site. Imagine families using the soccer and ball fields followed by family swim time in the leisure pool. Imagine elementary school age children taking a summer camp where the morning is swim lessons and the afternoon a soccer clinic or a nature hike on the local trails. Imagine arriving by bike or trail from surrounding neighborhoods or the Lake to Lake Trail, or even the future light rail stop at the Eastgate Park and Ride. Imagine high school swim, dive, and water polo players from all schools arriving at the facility to practice and compete under one roof. Imagine every community member having access to learning water safety skills. Imagine the community connections that will be fostered because there is a safe, inclusive space where everyone feels they belong. This state-of-the-art facility will be a cross-cultural portal that unites us. It will provide opportunities to cross paths, foster community, host events, and learn more about one another in shared space. As Bellevue expands and develops its transportation infrastructure, its vibrant pathways, and continues as an innovation city for local businesses, I encourage you to include amenities that invest in the resiliency of our community as high priority in your budget planning. Splash Forward is committed to reducing barriers to aquatics, building partnerships, assessing the private fundraising capacity, and leading a private funding campaign while working with the city to identify and develop the full range of funding sources. There is great momentum for private funding demonstrated by the just over $291,000 in seed funding already raised. This includes sizable donations from Amazon and Pacific Northwest Swimming. Splash Forward looks forward to hearing your feedback and urges you to provide direction to park staff on the outlined next steps that move this effort forward. Commitment to update Airfield Park's master plan is critical in securing private interest and partnerships. Let's make Bellevue be the city where you want to be, and with an extraordinary state-of-the-art amenity that will attract and retain our diverse and growing community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Papalardo. The next speaker on the list this evening is Addie Smith. And Ms. Smith, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. It just hold
Am I
one.
supposed to have a video or no?
No, no video. Hold on one moment while we get the timer started. Thank you. Okay, your time begins now. Thank you.
My name is Addie Smith. As you all know, I've contacted you a couple of times via these council meetings. I am a hate crime survivor. I've spoken with you previously about how important it is to monitor the ARCH program in light of the new MFTE program. One of the reasons I'm speaking before you again today is because had the ARCH program staff been properly monitoring its program, including wait lists and qualifications to live in a low-income apartment, my daughter and I wouldn't have been attacked, stalked, threatened, and harassed by a group of white racists. Not only did the ARCH program fail my daughter and I, but it also failed scores of actual qualified applicants. Because the staff from the ARCH program refused to audit files or basic necessities like monitoring the wait list, I have contacted HUD. I've spoken with Marsha Fudge's office, and one of the most important aspects of low-income housing is decent, safe housing, but that corporate landlords and agencies like the ARCH program or any programs going into the future, like your MFTE program, the one way to ensure fair housing is to follow an applicant wait list. Please write that down. Washington State is more racist from a Black woman's perspective than any Southern GOP-led state, and I am from the South. Democrats appointed most of the judges in the courts here in Washington State, and they're some of the most quote-unquote conservative, but I call racist judges in the nation. Democrats are always whining and complaining about Trump and Mitch McConnell stacking the courts with racist conservative judges, but if anyone would investigate the judges here in Washington State, they'll find that many of the Democrats here have done the exact same thing. And finally, if you will allow me to make a plea to you and to Governor Inslee and the Democrats in the House and Senate here, the bridge program for the eviction moratorium is faulty. Governor Inslee, city council members here in Bellevue, that bridge moratorium is going to fail people, and you're going to see mass evictions. You have to keep people safe. The COVID-19 pandemic is not over. Hospitals in Washington State are still full, and it's not just from an influx from Idaho and Alaska. It is from people right here in Washington State. Doctors are still overwhelmed. Doctors still cannot perform surgeries for other matters because their beds are still full from people with COVID-19. People are still calling 211, and the complaint that they are getting is, we're still waiting for the homeless people. They're backed up. We are not going to be prepared for the number of evictions we are going to see, and that are still happening right now from families right during COVID, and it's about to be winter. It's already cold. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. The next speaker on our list this evening is Court Olsen. And Mr. Olsen has provided a couple of PowerPoint slides to go with his communication. For that reason, we won't be able to share the timer. Mr. Olsen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I will be tracking your 3 minutes and let you know when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. Thank you, council members, for hearing me tonight. I'm not wearing my climate activist hat tonight, but I am wearing a few other hats. First hat that I'm wearing is a lifelong, frequent, and regular lap swimmer, and I'm here to talk about the Aquatic Center. The second hat I'm wearing is a person living very close to the proposed site for the Regional Aquatic Center that is up for discussion this evening. I was surprised to learn about that location by just reading the agenda for the council meeting tonight. There was no prior announcement to my knowledge given in our neighborhood, and I happen to be a neighbor that has a lot bordering on this facility site. I want you to look at this first slide because all of the red dots on this slide, which are largely within a 3-mile radius from the proposed site that's there with the brown circle around it. All of the red dots are existing swimming facilities in our South Bellevue area. So this is clearly not a site that is in need, and this particular location of South Bellevue, we're well served already. I'm also here to take the position or wear a third hat as a property tax and sales taxpayer. I wonder why Bellevue feels the need to pay for this regional facility, let alone host it. Obviously, we're well covered here in our area, so we don't need another swimming facility. I myself go to a swimming facility that is close by this location called Samina Swim and Recreation Center. It's also a fitness center and it has a gym and lots of other facilities. So our area is well served. Let's move to the next slide, please. This second slide shows an overview, though it's rather small, of the area by satellite. And the area circled in brown, I don't know if you can see the biggest circle anyway, is the proposed site. It's property owned by the city currently. And it was
remaining, Mr. Olsen.
Right. It was proposed to be a park development, which we all got notice for in our neighborhood. But it's very structurally suspect in that area in the center. It's an old dump, and I think it would be very hazardous. That's my fourth hat as an engineer. I have to tell you, this is not a good site for that kind of building. I'll give you more information in an email that I'll follow up with. I appreciate you listening tonight. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Olsen. The next speaker on the list this evening is Lisha Wig. And Ms. Wig, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, your time begins now.
This is Lisha Wig, 4811 134th Place. Honorable Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council members, we want to start off by expressing our deep gratitude to the Council and staff for engaging with us. We just found out that the evaluation of the non-residential base FAR is not something that will be looked at in the Eco Northwest report, and so Council could proceed on this decision. We want you to know that we have always wanted to, and continue to want, to build as many amenities as we can, regardless of whether we earn amenity points for doing so. Maximizing amenities creates a richer place that people want to come to and stay at. And we believe it's not only the right thing to do, but in our self-interest to do so because we keep our properties. The only reason we asked for a higher base non-residential FAR was to ensure that the project did not have more initial cost burden than it could bear, since that could delay the delivery of all amenities, including housing. It was certainly not to avoid providing amenities. We're requesting that Council consider adding more amenities to the top tier, since with a very low starting base FAR, we need to earn a lot of amenity points to reach the maximum FAR, and we only have 3 options right now to do so, which may not be enough. Maximizing FAR should be in the community's best interest, since it will also maximize housing, affordable housing, and amenities, and provide density across from a light rail station, which is in line with the city's growth strategy. Downtown has 9 amenity options in their top tier, and the adjacent OLB South only needs to earn 0.5 FAR to go from their base to their maximum FAR. We have 3 options available in the top tier, and we need to earn 3 to 5 times the amenities as next door to to reach our maximum bar. Our request is to ensure we have the opportunity to earn the amenity points that may be needed. Second, childcare amenity points are currently capped at facilities of 10,000 square feet. However, we know that many childcare facilities need a minimum of 15,000 square feet. We would encourage the council to provide amenity points for the full size of these childcare facilities. Finally, one item we brought up in our June 25th letter, which we don't see on an agenda, is the width of the pre-located street. The code requires a 60-foot wide street on the Hilton property between Hilton and Bellevue Club, but the driveway and bridge over Sturtevant Creek are 30 feet wide. The 60-foot wide street will double the width of the pavement over the creek, and in doing so, reduce the daylighting of a salmon-bearing creek. We are concerned about this environmental impact, and the federal approvals to build on top of the creek may be difficult. We would suggest and propose the street be 60 foot wide, all on the Hilton property, but that the street could be reduced to 30 feet in width only where it crosses the stream. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Wig. The next speaker on the list is Mon Wig. And Mr. Wig, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you. Your time begins now.
Mon Wig at 4811 134th Place, Southeast Bellevue. Honorable Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members, I want to talk about an item today that is of paramount importance for the success of this development. It is the block length and perimeter requirement in draft LUCA. This item is already on the agenda for the next council meeting on 11/1. I'm bringing it up now so staff can provide their input before the 11/1 meeting to the council. I have brought up this item before with the staff. For your information, this is the only site in downtown and East Main that has this requirement. Staff has told us they added this requirement because it is in the comprehensive plan. However, the comprehensive plan suggests walkable blocks wherever reasonably feasible. This requirement forces us into a grid system of potential streets and would prohibit us from building the vision with curved street as we have shown in our renderings. For your information, above ground parking will be wrapped with retail in front and parking behind for convenience of retail customers. Small block requirement will break up this above ground parking, make it much less convenient, more confusing, and less efficient for retail customers because the parking is broken up. We strongly recommend that perimeter requirement be eliminated and the 350 foot maximum block length be limited to only 112th Street or Avenue. We all must recognize that this is an isolated site with no retail around it today. Public is not coming to this area to shop. This makes it much harder to develop retail in this area and for retailers to survive. Therefore, convenient parking will be of paramount importance. We truly hope you listen to this need and limit 350 foot maximum block length only to 112th Avenue and with no perimeter requirement. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Wig. The next speaker on the list this evening is Susie Pettis. And Ms. Pettis, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect, thank you. Your time begins now.
All right, good evening, Mayor Robinson and council members. My name's Susie Pettis and I live at 3850 166th Avenue Southeast. I want to express my support for Splash Forward's mission and their efforts with the city of Bellevue. While I've been a Bellevue resident for over 30 years, I grew up in Spokane, and when I was younger, I had the privilege to spend my summers at a community pool where I took swim lessons, swam on swim team, and eventually became a lifeguard. When I moved to Bellevue, I was surprised to see all the small private swim clubs tucked away in neighborhoods, which required memberships to join. I realized how lucky I was that Spokane invested in community pools I came from a very poor family and I would have had a completely different childhood if private swim clubs were our only option. As an adult, I'm a mom of 4 children, 3 of whom are autistic. Because our community is surrounded by water, it's a high priority that I taught my children water safety at a young age. 91% of deaths in autistic children are due to drowning. And while my family was fortunate to be able to join a private club and pay for swim lessons, not all families are so lucky. For that reason, it's important that we provide water safety programming that's accessible to youth and adults, especially those on the autism spectrum. Raising children with disabilities is often isolating. When my kids were in elementary school, we tried recreational clubs for sports like baseball and soccer. But even in a rec club, the need to win was more important than the need for inclusion. My kids sat on the sideline and watched their peers play, or they were relegated to play on a lower team with teammates who were not their peers, losing that opportunity to foster social skills and develop strong friendships. Water has been the great equalizer because it's individual. Although my kids were never good enough to participate in the highly competitive swim team at our pool, they were able to play with their peers and feel like they fit in. We've spent many hours at the pool in the summer, and after so much swimming, one of my sons knew that he would like to be a lifeguard when he was old enough. Recently, Splash Forward offered him an opportunity to get his lifeguard and Red Cross certification. Words can't express the emotional moment it was when he earned that certification. His 2 older siblings are still struggling to find their fit, but the fact that he found where he belongs is amazing. And my hope is that other families can have similar experiences. Given my childhood experience and my connection to the disability community, I know there's a great need in Bellevue for an accessible and affordable public aquatic center that serves all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. We need an inclusive, safe place for our youth, families, and all residents to come together and create community connections. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peets. The next speaker on the list this evening is Jessie Claussen. Ms. Claussen, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Your time begins now.
Great. Hi, Mayor Robinson and council members. This is Jessie Claussen from McCullough Hill Larry. I'm here tonight representing the Bellevue Club related to the East Main Luca. I wanted to echo essentially most of what Mr. Wig said related to the perimeter length and maximum block width. I know you're not discussing that tonight, but wanted to put it on your radar screen. From the Bellevue Club's perspective, staff has recommended looking ahead that an expansion of the Bellevue Club be required to comply with such a requirement. We are concerned that such a requirement will hamper some future expansion of the Bellevue Club, just given, how big of use and big of a building might be necessary to expand the club and to support the club. So we just wanted to put that on your screen and on staff screen just to talk about next time. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ms. Claussen. The next speaker on the list is Vishnu Manjuputi. And Mr. Manjuputi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Your time begins now.
All right. Dear Mayor Lynn Robinson and members of the City Council, I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Vishnu Manjuputi, and I live at 1204 150th Avenue Northeast, Bellevue, Washington, 98007. I'm currently an 8th grader at Odell Middle School and have been a member of the Bellevue Youth Link Climate Action Team for the past 3, this is currently my 4th years. I personally care about climate because it will severely impact the lives of my generation and future generations on our planet. I have worked towards sustainability by helping to plan various community sustainability summits and have spread awareness about climate change. Thank you so much for your past work on the Environmental Stewardship Plan. It's great that Bellevue has a plan so that we can move forward on important steps for reducing our emissions, especially for buildings and transportation. As outlined in the plan, we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. Full funding for implementing the Environmental Stewardship Plan means we can really get moving on increasing access to clean and renewable energy, reducing the environmental impacts of transportation, preserving ecosystems, and helping with other actions as well. I'm glad that the Environmental Stewardship Plan is in its implementation phase, and I urge you to support it fully. Your support can ensure that current staff and any additional future staff that might be needed can put the plan in motion quickly enough to meet our goals. As you know, staff can do many important things, such as work on public education plan and manage actions in the shorter term. And they can also do research so that longer range efforts can take shapes. A livable climate is absolutely essential to mine and others' futures. Please ensure that Bellevue fully funds our environmental stewardship plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manjuputi. And that reaches the end of our pre-registered list. At this point, I would ask if there is anyone else who would like to make comment to the City Council. Please use the raise hand function or *9 if you're connected with a phone. And I see 2 additional hands. The first hand is Don Marsh. Mr. Marsh, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Your time begins now.
All right, good evening. My name is Don Marsh, and I am a co-founder of the nonprofit group 300 Trees. I'm here tonight to enthusiastically commend the city's fall tree giveaway that was held a week ago. During the weekend event and following days, approximately 700 free trees were distributed. The event was well organized, the variety of trees offered to Bellevue residents was amazing, and the volunteers were passionate. Best of all, our customers were very satisfied. The most common feedback I heard was, "This program is amazing. We love our trees, and we're so happy our city is doing this." We want to especially recognize the tireless efforts of Rachel Wells and Jennifer Ewing. Not only did they have to search far to find trees in another state, but they took care of all the details of the event: gloves and bags and a yummy lunch for volunteers, trees and signs and mulch for residents, and a willingness to carry trees and get their hands dirty. We are blessed to have such dedicated civil servants. The second most common comment from our residents was concern for tree removal that has happened in their neighborhoods. Many told of mature trees being cleared, 5 or 6 at a time, with the city's implicit approval. We have surveyed tree protection codes in other cities, both nearby and throughout the Pacific Northwest, and found that Bellevue's codes are not strong. Perhaps we have been so blessed in the past that we have come to take our tree canopy for granted. However, we are encouraged by statements from council members and candidates for the upcoming election. The time is ripe for action, and 300 Trees is preparing recommendations to help protect our city and a park for future generations. One thing we are especially excited about is an updated tree canopy survey we are preparing in partnership with the city. With the help of artificial intelligence, smart companies can now identify trees in satellite imagery to produce a fast, accurate, and inexpensive canopy survey every couple of years. We can now accurately track our progress toward the city's goal of 40% average tree canopy coverage by 2050. We will include these results and trend analysis in a State of the Trees report we will provide to the council before the end of the year. 300 Trees will offer another tree giveaway next spring, but the biggest news on the horizon is a tree planting event on the Sammamish High School campus in mid-November. This was organized in partnership with students at the high school, the Bellevue School District, the Washington Department of Natural Resources, and YMCA's Earth Service Corps. We have gotten permits to proceed from the city. In just one weekend, we are hoping to create a new mini forest containing 300 trees, including a few special trees to memorialize students who did not survive the COVID pandemic. As always, we are grateful for your support and look forward to many years of partnership with you and the city's Environmental Stewardship Department. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. The next speaker, or I'm sorry, the additional hand that I see raised, and we have time for one more, is Katya Palmer. Ms. Palmer, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, thank you. Your time begins now.
Hi, thank you, City Council. I'm here on behalf of Splash Forward as a new community member in Bellevue as well, in support of building the new aquatic center on the proposed site, of which I have also sent a letter, and I'll shortly reiterate some of my bold points, but just would like to add a little bit more about the mission of the work that I'm very invested with, that is going to drive forward what I feel is true community building in my neighborhood of Lake Hills, which will be very close to where the new facility is built. Acknowledging that there are several pools in the area, I also coach swim team for high school, as well as am a water polo coach at Sammamish and Interlake. And I can tell you that there is not much access for us right now. You know, we're outside right now. After this meeting, we'll go and compete against Auburn Riverside at the Edgebrook Pool, of which one by one, including myself, each of us have fallen sick or otherwise in the past couple of weeks because of competing in a water sport that's outdoors. So first, this facility for me, as not only a former competitive swimmer and coach, as well as aquatic facility operations manager for the Y for the last 5 years, being outside is not ideal. As I did my research to figure out where we were going to practice, I found that there were plenty of pools in this neighborhood. However, they were all at private pools. And so with that, I could not find a pool that was adequate for competitive swimming or water polo in my search. And with that, the cost of accessing those facilities were great. Outside of my hat in the community as a coach, like I mentioned, I also have managed a Learn to Swim program for the YMCA for the last 5 years, and of which I always look to add value, and of which adding value to me is being able to easily find a location that I can access that's inexpensive. And I have not been successful in doing that. And so of which I'd like to highlight the importance of making sure that we have accessible facilities in Bellevue, and of which at Splash Forward, we've worked hard to create aquatics pathways. And I'll briefly share a minute with our mission within this last minute. The Aquatic Pathways mission at Splash Forward is to raise awareness and reduce barriers to aquatics accessibility for all ages and abilities. So everyone, especially our Black, African, Asian, Indigenous, Latinx, Hispanic, New American, immigrant, and refugee communities, and people with disabilities can be water safe and enjoy healthier lives. I mean, we've created some foundations that allow us to get there, which one of my favorite hallmarks, our ability to invite people and have a safe space so that we can engage with folks of a different diversity, of which living in this neighborhood where we propose to build a pool, it is the most diverse neighborhood in our city from my short year of living here, from what I understand. So it's most important that we have a facility that the city centers diversity in aquatics so that we can build positively in the future. And that's it. Please let me know after reading my letter if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer. And we have reached the maximum allotted time for oral communications. I do see one additional hand, but Ms. Meyer, I would encourage you to email the council at council@bellevuewa.gov. And Mayor, that closes oral communication.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Miyake, we have a report from you tonight.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. I have one item under the manager's report this evening, and that is a brief overview of the upcoming mid-biennium budget process. Tonight, staff will provide an informational overview of the calendar as well as the topics we plan to cover at future meetings. This is an informational update, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tony Call, our director of our Finance and Asset Management Department. Tony?
Thank you, City Manager Miyake. Charmaine, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, it looks great. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I apologize for the interruption. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members, thank you for your time this morning. As always, it's a pleasure to be back in front of you this evening. Tonight is information only. It's a heads up on the upcoming calendars ahead of us for the mid-biennium update. As you remember, we adopted the 21-22 budget and the 21-27 capital investment program in December of last year. The mid-biennium update provides an opportunity for us to do a midpoint check-in on the status of that budget and make corrections as needed. The mid-biennium tends to be limited in design and addresses items like the change of inflation, whether or not we have errors and omissions or corrections that need to happen in the budget, whether we have updated fiscal information, whether or not we might need adjustments for impacts of recently approved legislation or other items that come before the council. As always, the adjustments are based on your direction and decision points. The proposed timeline in front of you this evening is about over the next month and a half or so. I'm going to see you 4 or 5 times. Next week, Director Brennan will be here to discuss development services. This is the annual fee update that you hear each year. So this makes sure that we are ensuring that our fees reflect the cost of providing services and to sustain adequate resources to ensure demand throughout the development cycle. That will be in front of you next week. And then on November 8th, I'll be back to talk about the overall mid-biennium adjustments, again, including that long laundry list I mentioned a minute ago, and also review the general fund forecast. November 15th will be the public hearing. And then we have 2 potential options for adoption of the mid-biennium, depending on your consideration, discussion, and direction. If we're prepared on November 22nd, we can certainly bring adoption back to you that evening. If we still have items open for discussion, we certainly can bring it back on December 6th. So we have a little bit of flexibility into how the adoption happens. As always, when we look at all of those calendar times, each time has opportunity for council feedback and discussion. In order to adopt the mid-biennium this year, the list is much shorter than what you've seen historically. So last year, if you remember adopting the actual biennial budget, I think we had 12 or 13 items that had to be acted upon. The mid-biennium is much shorter and more confined. Council will need to adopt the development services fee ordinance, address a bank capacity via a resolution, and set the property tax levy ordinance for 2022. Council will also need to adopt the mid-biennium budget ordinance, which we fondly refer to as the umbrella ordinance. So this includes all of our funds and our appropriation level by funds. It also includes some administrative items like our pay plans and donations under $90,000. So the list is much shorter this year and more confined to mid-biennium. With that, information only, just a heads up on what's coming ahead of you for the next several meetings when it comes to the mid-biennium. I look forward to coming back and forward in front of you. With that, Mr. Miyake, I turn it back over to you.
I believe that concludes our manager's report for this evening, Mayor and council members.
Sure.
And if you have any questions, we're here to answer any if you have any tonight on this process.
Okay, any questions? Let me see, let me get my view up here, right? I see council members on. Go ahead.
I did have a question because last year when we talked about our biannual budget, we talked about the fact that there were a lot of things that were unknown. We looked at different levels of budget based on the revenue forecast, and certainly there's still a lot of uncertainty. But will we get a robust financial information on revenue different than when we voted in the budget a year ago? Because we did talk about the fact that this mid-buy might be different than previous years in that we've never lived through a pandemic. And so our projection going into the 2-year budget, we'll know more that might enable us to look at what might be needed in our budget.
Yes, council members on, Tony Call here. Yes, we will bring back both a revenue forecast as well as an expenditure forecast. So it will have both sides of that equation coming back to the council. That will come forward to you probably on November 8th is when I anticipate that information coming forward.
And will the revenue forecast be also multiple scenarios like we did last year, or do you anticipate coming back with one revenue line?
When we forecast revenues, we forecast them within a range, and then we try to narrow it down to have at some point one line that we're at least trying to put our pin on, acknowledging that, as I will tell all people, that as soon as we produce a forecast, it's probably wrong. But we attempt to have it at least within a reasonable range of reality. So we'll bring back to you probably a single line. We certainly can expand as to how we came up to that space, because we do have things that are positives and the negatives that bring it to a single line.
Great, thank you.
You're very welcome. Happy to help.
Okay, seeing no more questions, let's move on. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Great. So we have 3 study session items tonight. We'll start with the first one. Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce this?
Sure, thank you, Mayor and council members. The first item is the Environmental Stewardship Initiative quarterly update. By way of background, as part of the adoption of the Environmental Stewardship Initiative plan back in December of 2020, council directed staff to provide quarterly updates on the plan implementation progress and an annual update on our environmental performance metrics. This was last in front of you. The last quarterly update was on July 19th and focused on the annual environmental performance metrics update. The presentation this evening is informational and As I mentioned, it will provide you an update. Joining us this evening is Matt Cummins, the Community Development Director, as well as Emil King, Assistant Director in Planning, and Jennifer Ewing, Environmental Stewardship Program Manager. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the team to start the presentation.
Thank you for the introduction, City Manager Miyake. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Neuenhuis, and members of council. Staff are excited to be here tonight to provide an update on actions to implement the 2021 to 2025 Environmental Stewardship Plan. This is a council priority, and staff from across the organization have been busy making progress on close to 60% of the 77 actions in the plan in year one. A recent highlight was the tree giveaway, as Mr. Marsh mentioned during oral comments. It was really exciting to see residents getting an opportunity to participate in taking collective action that seems to be leading to more actions as well. So we have a short presentation for you tonight, and we are happy to then answer any questions that you might have. So I'll go ahead and turn things over to Jennifer Ewing, our program manager. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Neuenhuis, and members of the council. I'm excited to provide an update to you all this evening. The presentation is for information only, and we'll focus on an update on our progress towards implementing the Environmental Stewardship Plan. We'll talk about our kind of overall progress with implementing the plan, some key highlights from the past quarter, and then talk a little bit about what's next. So, as you remember, when the plan was adopted at the end of last year, you provided direction for quarterly updates on the Environmental Stewardship Initiative. The way we are approaching these is once a year, we'll do more of an update on our key performance indicators, mostly because this data is available on more of an annual basis, like for the greenhouse gas emissions, recycling, and that sort of thing. So at our last presentation in July, that one was focused more on our performance indicators. For tonight, and for the other three presentations out of the cycle, we'll focus more on how we're doing towards implementing the plan. And attached to the memo for this evening, there is a progress report that's also posted on our environmental performance dashboard. You can see the link to that here. So to just kind of recap, this is what we presented to you at the beginning of the year for the work plan, or some of the highlights from the work plan for this year. I won't go back through all of these, but I'll touch a bit in the presentation on just how we're progressing with these actions. And then, as part of implementing the plan, Council also directed us to perform, continued enhanced engagement with, our stakeholders and residents who are involved in the plan update process. And so that's really underpinning the work around these different projects. So as Emil mentioned, of the 77 actions in the plan, we have started work on about 60% of them. So either for a project we've begun work, or we've already incorporated something into more of our operational practices. And then on the flip side, about 40% of the actions we have not started yet. However, bearing in mind this is a 5-year plan, and we're still not quite done with year one. And then as part of the plan, we did include a timeline for when we anticipated working on all 77 actions. And it was never really the intention to begin work on all 77 on day one, just due to capacity constraints, and also some interdependencies with other projects. So overall, again, we've begun work on about 60% of the actions. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the highlights of the different actions we've been working on. For on the waste side, our utilities department has been working with businesses in Bellevue to help them comply with the statewide plastic bag ban, sharing information and technical assistance. which, that's just work has started more recently as the ban went into effect on October 1st. We've put in place a system for reporting on our progress, working with our interdepartmental team to track that and include that progress report on our dashboard. On the municipal operations side, we have initiated a green fleet strategy to look at how we can electrify the vehicles in the city fleet and working with a consultant on that. And then as was mentioned on the natural systems side, a couple big accomplishments was with the tree giveaway that happened last weekend. And then we've continued just over the past weekend we distributed about 500 trees on October 8th or 9th and 10th. And then we've been delivering some other trees to residents and community organizations, residents who need assistance with delivery and planting, and continuing to work with volunteers on that. And we still have one more weekend to go, so I haven't done the full tally of the volunteer hours, but I think we have around 200 or more volunteer hours that we've leveraged for the tree giveaway, which has been really great. And we have really appreciated all the help from 300 Trees and other organizations for the project. Another big project underway is the watershed management plan. Also included in the environmental stewardship plan. This is being led by our utilities department to do a really comprehensive look at all of the streams in Bellevue, look at how healthy they are, come up with a toolbox of strategies, and then perform outreach with the community, and then moving into developing recommendations for how to preserve and improve the health of all of Bellevue's streams. On the energy side, one of the big programs we're excited to begin work on is the Clean Buildings Act Technical Support Program. So we brought on a consultant and are working on designing that program with the goal of launching it at the end of this year. And the intent of that is really to support buildings in Bellevue that are over 50,000 square feet that have to comply with the state Clean Buildings Act. So kind of similar to the work we're doing with the plastic bag ban, we're similarly working with buildings and with businesses in Bellevue to help them get ahead and comply with this state law, and also help them save energy. And then on the enhanced engagement side, what we've been doing over the past quarter is kind of just establishing some communication channels with our community, a more regular newsletter, building up our Engaging Bellevue site, helping our stakeholders and our residents understand and just learn about different opportunities to plug into some of these different projects that we mentioned, like the watershed management plan and the mobility implementation plan. We've started one of our working groups and plan to continue and expand on those with our urban forestry working group. And then on the tree giveaway side, we worked with a consultant that specializes in outreach and engagement on environmental issues to diverse communities. So really tried to do some targeted outreach in Bellevue to our Chinese and Spanish speaking communities to make that program accessible to a really diverse group of residents. So what are we hearing from the enhanced engagement? I think some of these were already kind of mentioned. I think we've heard an interest in updating the tree codes. We're starting to just scope out what that effort would take and understand that, there isn't really just one tree code, even though, we kind of all refer to it that way, but trees are actually addressed in our land use code, our clearing and grading code, transportation code, and utilities code. And there's some interrelationship between all of those. Transportation is planning on moving forward and updating the portion of the transportation code that deals with trees in the right of way. And then there's also some work as part of our land use planning effort to coordinate when we might be able to work on the tree code update, along with some of the other big land use planning projects that are in the pipeline. So definitely have heard some interest there. We've heard, I think, from some residents a desire to scale up our implementation. We've also heard just, as we've reached out to kind of continue to build partnerships, we've also had a couple groups coming to us recently to look at how they might support, in particular, some of our urban forestry efforts, looking at working with the Newport Way Library on some outreach and education, and with the Audubon Society on tree planting locations. So excited to, really kind of continue to broaden and deepen our partnerships. And then on the air quality side, looking at how we might, gather some more information on air quality in Bellevue, in particular near our freeways. And then finally, as Mr. Marsh mentioned, we've just after the tree giveaway, we definitely heard a lot of enthusiasm and gratitude from our residents for doing this program. So what's next? One of the big things we'll be working on over the next couple months is developing and finalizing the work plan for the Environmental Stewardship Initiative for next year. And then we'll be coming back to council at the beginning of next year to provide an overview of that. On the programmatic side, looking at launching the Clean Buildings Act Technical Support Program, moving into starting the design of a home energy retrofit program. And then a couple other projects that will kind of help feed into the comprehensive plan update, looking at air quality and any, kind of best practices around considering air quality with land use planning, and similarly looking at climate resiliency and how we might take some of that into account in our comprehensive plan update. So yeah, just to summarize again, tonight was, really for information only as part of our quarterly update. And yeah, happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that presentation. So no direction tonight, but if we have any questions on the update that we have, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, I'm seeing Deputy Mayor. Hold on, let me write this down. Deputy Mayor, followed by Stokes, followed by Lee, followed by Zahn. Councilmember Robertson, did you have your hand up? No. Councilmember Barksdale. Gotcha. Okay, so starting with Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. And first off, Jennifer, great update. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Really some good action on the plan already. Just a couple of quick questions for you. So one on the enhanced stakeholder group, could you give us a quick update on that? That was for folks that might not be familiar with that was created during the budget process there last time around. I'm just curious how often you've met with the group, what that group is tasked with so far, any outcomes there, or moving forward, how that group is going to be utilized. And then also wanted to talk a little bit about that home energy retrofit program design. What's going to be the approach on that? Just very interested on that. I also want to thank all the groups that were involved, like 300 Trees and the tree giveaway program. That is a fantastic program. I went to one earlier in the year. Great interest there. So many great residents taking advantage of the program and planting trees. A fun question. I'm just curious what tree was most popular, if there was one. But I'll leave it there with those three questions. That should probably fulfill my 3 minutes. So thanks. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So first on the enhanced engagement. So we have convened the sustainability leaders group. We've had kind of one larger meeting with that group and have another one planned in the next few weeks. Also have started the working groups with the urban forestry one, and we'll be having one with the commercial buildings group in the middle of November. And then we had a resident community town hall in July. So we are, I'd say kind of ramping up our engagement with, both our stakeholder group and our residents. as we've, I'd say ramping up engagement as some of our, new projects and programs are ramping up. So the group at this point is, really kind of tasked with providing input, just staying up to date on what we're working on. And then a lot of the, real engagement is going to be happening more at like the working group levels. Although, the participants are kind of welcome to share input at any point. So yeah, we're kind of expecting to, deepen a lot of that engagement later this year and as we move into next year.
Oh, that's great to hear. Okay.
Yep. And then let's see, with the home energy retrofit program, I think a couple of the goals for that program are really to kind of build on some of the incentives that already exist between PSE and our home improvement and home weatherization programs. So looking at how we might kind of supplement those, also looking at, who's accessing those programs and what are, are there any kind of barriers to accessing those? Also looking at how we might, for folks who are taking advantage of the weatherization program, are there other PSE incentives they could take advantage of? So I think the intent is to kind of help fill any gaps, I would say, and leverage existing programs. But we are kind of at more the beginning stage of designing that one. But those are just some of the kind of principles we have in mind. And then let's see, I think your third question was about the most popular tree, which was by far and away fruit trees, which we found, well, we actually thought it might be flowering trees. So I think for next year, we know that there is a lot of desire for fruit trees, although, we kind of intentionally wanted to have a nice variety of species to give away just to, continue to increase diversity of trees in Bellevue.
Right. Thanks, Jennifer.
Yep.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, Jennifer and staff, I really appreciate this. I think we're seeing the benefits that we were hoping for in terms of having a little more reporting. And I think it gives us a much better sense. And it's so hard to, do something in a year and explain everything like this. And it looks like, in a way, I would guess it's kind of helping, it helps any organization to have a kind of plan like this moving forward. And so I really appreciate the effort to do this and respond to that. I appreciate the comments that have been made so far. And a couple of things on it, I thought that was very good about what we're hearing. And all three of those are, and the gratitude is really important. And it's good to know that. I think all of those are three good questions to talk about and see what we can do. I think scaling up implementation, of course, that takes more staffing or other work and that kind of thing. And getting things together, it seems like you're pulling things together better as you go along. And the scoping efforts and all these things, it kind of, I think, gets us a sense of what you're focusing on and what you're looking at. And again, I think it helps the community to understand what we're doing. A lot of partnership opportunities, and that's something I appreciate, and I think we all think that's really important. So looking forward to seeing what's next. And the scaling up, as I said, implementation is very important. And one of the things I did wonder about, just as a little aside, is not really criticizing. I'm just wondering, it's kind of hard to take the percentage meeting goals and understand what that relates to. Do you have, I assume you have more detailed information that we or anybody in the public could get a little more detail. Is that correct?
Yep, we do. And that's really more the progress on implementing the actions in the plan.
Yeah. Okay. No, very good. I really appreciate this, and I appreciate your responding to our request. And I think it's always good to have that conversation, and then that way we're all getting on the same page a lot. And great work. It sounds like we're making really solid progress, and we need to keep working with you to help you even attain better heights, which we can all. Thank you.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. I participated in the 300 program a couple of months ago, and so I was really happy to also participate in a tree giveaway program this last weekend. It was very impressive. I went on Saturday and wasn't too many people there, so on. But I went to Sunday, and it's amazing when the cars were lining up all the way in 3 lines, and the sun came out. Just amazing. And people were very, very much, waiting, anxious, and lots of different people, all kinds of people, big trucks and small cars and economy, whatever. And I think to answer the question, which tree is the most popular, I think absolutely flowering, then fruit. But after that, it's magnolia. It's southern magnolia. And I learned there's something called galaxy magnolia. So that's very good. Anyway, so I want to compliment, Jennifer, Rachel, and of course, volunteers that really worked out. Those volunteers, they were lifting pots and heavy stuff and directing traffic. I think they had a great time. So it worked out very well. So thanks again. One thing I want to focus on is engagement. I think we still are not letting people know what we're doing. We're doing great thing. Lots of stuff going on. But people don't know. People just say, I legitimately, if they're anxious, they want to do more things. I understand, absolutely. But there's a lot of things they don't really understand. They don't really know what's going on. For example, this maybe it's a problem of one is structurally. How do we do that? I think we need to talk about that a little bit. I have some ideas, but I won't talk now because I only have maybe half a minute left. But some of the programs, it's difficult because they belong to many other departments, not just your department, Jennifer. It's not environmental stewardship program. So it's hard. For example, the city program, Green Fleet, where are we? It's done by somebody else, right? Who is? We don't know. We are making progress, but what is it? Another question that's, watershed, people ask, we know we've been briefed by Department of Transportation about Lewis Creek and Sunset Creek. So we know something about it. But then the question was, how about Cold Creek? What's going on? What's the environmental program going on there? As I just heard you were talking about, the Cold Creek, the other creek program we're doing. And it's done by some other groups that we are not focusing on. So I think we need to focus on some of the programs we can really look at and then communicate with folks and getting people involved so they know what's going on, So the last one I want to suggest is, just a new idea. We have projects we did before, but I think still very, very feasible. It's doing partnership with Puget Sound Energy. We have solar panel program. We did it a number of years ago. It was very successful. We had people come in, we do workshop. We had a few weeks of program. And that's how, we got new hire to just do that. So it was very successful. But what happened to it? It disappeared. I remember our neighborhood. Somebody said, lots of people went and looking.
Councilmember Lee, can you wrap up?
So
please?
anyway, so I want to just point it out. So good job. Let's focus on how we can do more. Thank you.
Jennifer, did you want to answer any of the questions that are?
Please.
Yeah, sure. Just to the kind of communication piece, I'll speak to that. I think that is something that's been on our radar, where we have really tried to look at kind of both communicating about what we're working on and then also helping people know kind of where and when there's opportunities for them to kind of get involved and share their input or volunteer or what have you. So, that has been a bit of our focus with the enhanced engagement over the past several months, was just kind of, getting in a process in place to kind of get that information out to people through, our different channels. And then with the progress report, really, right, we have heard from folks, okay, what's happening on some of these specific actions. So, really trying to start a process of reporting on that more regularly, the specifics of all the actions in the plan and where we're at.
Great. Okay, thank you. Council members on.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Well, thank you. I have We Love Our Tree sign in my yard now, and I also enjoyed helping out with the tree giveaway and giving out the bags and the signs. And I just have to say, thank you so much, because I feel like we have a small yet mighty sustainability team, and you are doing so much to advance our ESP. You know, a couple things I just want to lift up and really appreciate is updating the tree codes. I think it's well over time to do that. We hear from our community the importance of that. Your comment about air quality, we do have large freeways that run through trisect our city. So actually having focus on that, I think is important. The home energy retrofit program, I think that'll be really complementary to the CPACER program that is targeting more of the commercial and the multi-fourplex units to be able to help with energy retrofit. So I'd really like that. The vulnerability assessment, thank you. It looks like that's going to be on the plan next year. I didn't see environmental equity assessment. So that's one of my questions is, seems like that's another one that's important for us to get going with right away. You know, with both the community and the municipal actions, what I also heard you talk about is the fact that we need to scale up implementation. And that is one area that I'm concerned about, is whether we have sufficient staff to be able to work on both the municipal and the community actions. Heard my colleagues talk about, right, the level of engagement and the work that we have ahead of us. And it seems to me that to be able to go after and leverage the partnerships and the grant opportunities, we may need to have more resources to work on that. And then lastly, you know, I know as part of K4C, we show the wedge analysis, and what it shows is if we're going to hit 50% greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, there are certain actions that are going to help us reduce our greenhouse gas emissions more than others. So I want to understand, when we talk about the 77 actions and the 31 that haven't begun yet, which ones are the most impactful in terms of driving down our greenhouse gas emissions? And are there some of those where it's later in the list to implement? But if it's harder to do, we might want to be getting going on those sooner instead of waiting for a long time on them. So those are a couple of thoughts and some questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think with the looking at the impact of different actions and the timing, I think that is a good consideration for us with the work plan. And I think we did that to a certain extent, you know, when we developed the plan in terms of thinking about the timing. And then, you know, I think there's kind of different aspects, but as we look at our emissions, you know, they primarily come from buildings and transportation. So on the building side, we're looking at, you know, how we both kind of existing buildings and new construction. And then on the transportation side, you know, the mobility implementation plan that the transportation department is leading is a, you know, pretty comprehensive planning effort to look at, you know, strategies and priorities for creating mobility options. But, you know, a big part of that, of course, is, you know, making our transportation more efficient and, you know, in turn reducing emissions. So those are some of the kind of big considerations. But yeah, for this year, a couple of the big things we've been trying to get off the ground are the, you know, the commercial buildings program, and then the home energy retrofit. So those kind of two big ones to look at for buildings. And then,
So is it possible for us to create our own wedge analysis based on our 77 actions bucketed into different places? So that's one of my asks for later.
Okay. Oh, I see. We did create a wedge analysis as part of the plan update that did kind of look at the impact of those. So yeah, we have that information that, you know, we looked at more kind of cumulatively of the kind of relevant actions. You know, there's some important actions in the plan that maybe don't necessarily play into the wedge analysis, but they're still important. So yeah, we did perform that analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barksdale.
Thank you, Mayor. Jennifer, thank you. As already mentioned, a small team, but doing a lot of work here and making a lot of impact. I do agree with figuring out a way to help your team scale and in order to make more progress. I mean, I think if we are going to hit our target, we're going to need to figure that out. So a mid-by discussion possibly, as I know other council members have brought up. In terms of the action, so kind of building on what Councilmember Zahn mentioned, in terms of some actions are more impactful than others, is there a way for us to indicate that on the chart and like on the dashboard so that we can keep track of like where we are with those? My original question was really going to be, can we commit to at least one action per area per year? And if so, what would that look like? What would it take in order to do that, kind of building into the increasing scale? Couple of areas that I noticed, for example, like the residential has a large percentage of natural gas use. And so maybe this is the home energy retrofit program. First of all, I didn't easily find that on the website. So I don't know if we can make that easier to discover for everyone. But does that cover things such as helping people convert from natural gas to electrical, so heat pumps, water heaters and such? And then in terms of recycling, so commercial and multifamily are some of the biggest contributors, and residential is pretty low. And but they're also, what was it? Anyway, I can't remember, but it was they were one of the largest contributors and one of the least recycling as well, right? So is there a way to, can we do something in that space? I know there was some earlier conversation around them not having recycling or compost bins at those facilities. So I'll leave it there. Oh, state ledge. Is there anything we can put on the state ledge agenda? The one completed action actually came from the state ledge. So interested in if anything has made it there.
Okay, yeah. In terms of thinking about how we might flag the actions that are more impactful than others from an emissions reduction standpoint, I might have to give a little more thought to just what that would look like. And how we could kind of report on that. Although I think that has been part of the thinking in our work planning for this year. But yeah, we could think about how we might kind of carry some of that forward and make it a little more explicit. For the home energy retrofit program, we're kind of just getting started with that. So, have more work to do to really kind of design what the program will cover. So we don't have much information on it yet on the website, but we definitely will. And then on the recycling standpoint, the utilities department is kind of trying to scale up some of their outreach for commercial and multifamily buildings, in particular to encourage more organics collection in both commercial and multifamily buildings. I think some of that outreach has obviously been a little bit hampered with COVID because they normally do a lot of in-person outreach. But yeah, I think there has been a desire to kind of shift focus to the types of buildings where the recycling rates are lower.
And is there anything that we could put on the state ledge agenda that would help us move things forward?
Oh yeah, we've had some initial discussions with the intergovernmental affairs. I think we can follow up and see if there's any kind of specifics we could add. There have been some updates to that over the past year or two that I think are still pretty relevant. So I don't know if there's any significant changes that would be needed based on I think the last update from last year.
Thank you.
So I just think that there's a big interest from the community in looking at our tree codes and looking at maybe what we can do with the lots and the clear cutting that's going on. And it seems like, I know that's on your list of things to do, and I know we have priorities, but I'd be really interested when we go into the mid-buy and we look at where we are, having kind of a line item of what it would cost to address those in addition to the other things that are on your list right now. Maybe move that up. And of course, everybody would have to be interested in doing that, but I'd like to see some numbers on that. And then down the road, I'm really interested in seeing what it's going to take to encourage retrofitting of some of our older buildings. And maybe we can start working on some partnerships for that. I'm sure PSC would be a strong partner in that, but there may be others as well. And I think that's what's going to take to finance what it will cost to retrofit some of those older office buildings. So we've talked a lot about residential, but I'm also interested in office buildings. So I think that's consistent with what you've heard from a lot of everybody, is I think in the mid-buy, if it's possible to come up with some line items of if certain things were to be prioritized, what it would cost and what it would take. Do we need to hire more people? Or, you know, what's the timeline for some of these things? Is it Councilmember Robertson, you have your hand up, go ahead.
Thanks. I've just been listening to the conversation, and the idea about the tree code, I think that there is more pressure or interest, I guess is a better word for that. I've been asking, not on the dais, but behind the scenes, to see if we can get a planning work plan come back. We used to get them where council could prioritize the planning work once a year or once every other year, sometimes more frequently. We haven't had one for a while. And the tree code would have to be something that goes in the land use code. And so I'd like to, if that's something that's of interest to the council, I'd like to see that idea put into, you know, the planning work plan, and that way council can prioritize, because we have been putting a lot of energy into encouraging our staff to go much, much faster on some of the planning work plan items. And so I think that it might be time to look at everything that's on there, particularly if the council is interested in adding more work to that agenda or work to that work plan. So that's just an ask. And I don't know if staff is going to bring that forward. I think doing it as part and parcel of the mid-buy, which I've talked to the city manager's office about, would be really appropriate. So thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. We're going to take a break. We'll come back at 7:30 and we'll resume our study session. So we'll see you then. We've got 4 of us here. Let's go ahead, Mr. Miyake. Would you like to introduce the first study session item?
Yes, Mayor. This is actually the second one.
Second, I know that.
This is on the Land Use Code Amendment for the East Main Station area. Tonight is the 6th in a series of study sessions for the council to consider the draft Land Use Code Amendment for the East Main Station area. Tonight, staff will present information that responding to questions that were raised in the previous study session on topics related to the floor area ratio, also known as FAR, the amenity incentive options and development agreements, also known as the DA. Following these discussions, the staff is seeking direction on these topics for incorporation of the land use code per the council direction that was given to us at the last meeting. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to the staff, Mike Brennan, who is the director, as well as Trisna Tanna's consulting attorney, and Nick Whipple, code and policy plan manager, all from the Development Services Department, Matt Cummins, director, and Emil King, assistant director from community development. And for that, I'm going to turn over to Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Miyake. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newhouse, and members of the council. As Mr. Miyake mentioned, we are returning to continue the discussion with the council, providing information that we shared on October 4th, and responding to questions or additional information requested by the council at that meeting, so you could continue your discussion and decision-making. Next slide, please. We are seeking council direction this evening, as Mr. Miyake mentioned, on the maximum and the base floor area ratio, the amenities incentive system options, and a development agreement, and how those can be used as departures in specific areas of the code. Next slide, please. So in general, we'll just be covering very quickly here, just a quick touch on the timeline, where we are and what's coming next with respect to the work in the Land Use Code Amendment for East Main, the sequence of review topics, and then the Land Use Code topics for this evening, the FAR amenities and the DA. Next slide, please. This is a high-level timeline that shows essentially where we are. I'll remind the council again, we held the public hearing, or you held the public hearing for this Land Use Code Amendment in July. And following that public hearing, the council can now adopt the Land Use Code Amendments for East Main when you are comfortable with the content of the code and any amendments that you would like to make. I'm going to hand it to Trisna. She's going to speak a little bit more about the upcoming topics and then begin a discussion on some of the additional information that was requested by council on October 4th. Trisna.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Neuenhuis, and council members. This slide shows in a bit more detail the timeline that Mike just went through, as well as the list of topics that council has directed for further discussions. I want to note that attachment B of your packet also has this list of topics along with explanations and the relevant city framework or needs, as well as any implication associated with the potential option or requested change relative to the topics here. As council moves through these study sessions, we have and will update this table to document council's feedback and direction. We know that council would like to move this LUCA forward as quickly as possible. To that end, we have laid out council's review on these topics to achieve this desired efficiency. We added this study session tonight in response to council's request so that we can return with additional information to address some trade-offs and understanding of trade-offs between higher base FAR and lower base FAR, and other information to round out council's discussion on amenity options and prioritization of amenities. At the next study session on November 1st, we will present information and analysis on floor plate and miscellaneous topics such as fee in lieu for affordable housing and exceptions to non-conforming provisions and expansions of the Bellevue Athletic Club, as you heard some of the comments from earlier this evening. We anticipate being able to present to council a finalized attachment B on November 15th so that we can confirm previous feedback and direction and on each of the topics here. So this will allow council to consider the entire list of adjustments to the draft LUCA for inclusion into the final ordinance and to potentially take action in December. There are several factors to keep in mind just to let you all know this. New requests, modifications to requests and new topics will likely add some time and process, as well as any additional environmental or other in-depth analysis. And lastly, this relies on council being able to provide direction on that November 15th date to finalize the LUCA. So recalling council's discussion a couple of weeks ago, we wanted to bring additional items forward to help with council's deliberation of the larger topics of non-residential base FAR and amenity options. The first item is regarding pedestrian and bicycle connectivity in and around the East Main area. We originally slotted this discussion for a later study session, but want to cover this tonight as this topic was raised at the last council meeting. There are two larger connections around the East Main area, as you see in this map. First, there is the Lake to Lake Trail shown in orange, and that runs east-west adjacent to the East Main Station area along Main Street. The second, there's a Lake Washington Loop Trail shown in green that connects north and south, running along 114th Avenue. There is another off-site trail in dashed green on the right-hand side of the screen here, which is the East Trail. With those, the two adjacent regional trails, the Lake to Lake Trail and the Lake Washington Loop Trail, in mind, there are three existing or required connections. First, the existing Southeast 6, shown in that gray color in the middle of the screen. And then the pre-located street just above that, shown in the dark, solid black line. This is located entirely in the Hilton property, just north of the Bellevue Athletic Club. And then just to note, the pre-located street is vehicular, low volume private street that will also have pedestrian facilities. And if the developer chooses, may contain bicycle facilities. The last required connection is also an east-west route, which is based on council's direction from last July. This is pedestrian and bicycle connection through the East Main site. So this is the dashed black line. This is located just between the Hilton site and the Red Lion site. There are other connections through the site, but these connections are up to the developer, meaning they can choose how to break up the blocks in order to meet the block perimeter and length requirements. They can choose pedestrian, bicycle, and or vehicular connections called potential streets in the draft code, which again is per council's direction from last July, is modeled after downtown's alleys with addresses, or they can provide open space, which may include pedestrian and bicycle routes. So aside from the 3 existing or required connections, the existing Southeast 6th Street, the gray line, the pre-located street, the solid black line, and then the pedestrian bicycle connection between the Hilton and Red Lion sites, the dashed black line, the developer gets to choose to provide potential streets or open spaces and what facilities to include, whether for pedestrians, bicycles, or vehicles. So the next table here shows the options in front of council. Option A is what is in the current draft code. This is the pedestrian and bicycle path, that dashed black line that you just saw in the previous screen, located between the Hilton and Red Lion sites. And then the stakeholders have asked for, instead of the pedestrian and bicycle connection at this location, this path should only be for pedestrians, primarily due to the grade change across the East Main site. Staff does support this request, recognizing the grade change, but also noting that there are other existing and required connections and the likelihood that the developer will choose to provide additional pedestrian bicycle connections in the potential streets and open spaces. The next column shows the pre-located street. The existing draft code does have the pre-located street only on the Hilton property, and it is not a public right-of-way. It is a private road per council's direction, again from last July. The stakeholders have asked for the same, what is in the draft code. So we are in agreement as to what the stakeholder is asking for and what the staff is recommending forward. The second item is regarding affordable housing, which is a top tier amenity in the draft code, as you heard from us last council meeting. The draft code defines affordable housing as 80% AMI, or area median income, which is consistent with the citywide affordability level. Stakeholders have requested to expand the affordability level to 100% AMI for owned affordable housing or condos, similar to what is allowed in the Bellevue code. Staff supports this request as it seems consistent with prior council feedback. And so again, in regarding to the pedestrian bicycle connection and affordable housing, we are bringing this forward for council consideration so that it rounds out your discussion for the remaining topics related to base FAR, as well as more specifically the amenity options. So as noted earlier, the bulk of our presentation tonight is focused on the topics of FAR, amenity, incentive options, and development agreement options. This table here summarizes the options available to council on these topics. Options A and B are packaged options for council's consideration. This is the same table that you had seen 2 weeks ago in the last study session. Option A in the draft code has a base FAR of 2.5 for non-residential, 3.5 for residential, and a max FAR of 5.0 for both non-residential and residential. I do want to take a moment here to explain that the maximum FAR of 5.0 is the maximum for measured or calculated density. As you know, and as you've heard from some comments, there are critical areas on the site, and the presence of critical areas will lessen the development capacity. This is accurate, and it is consistent with the critical areas code that will be triggered and for any development with critical areas on their site. Of course, critical areas code is really intended to protect sensitive areas and to impose regulations so that there is protection in place for the function and values of these areas. We do want to note, though, that the draft code includes certain exemptions that apply to all sites, whether encumbered with a critical area or not. These exemptions allow for floor area to be not counted for towards FAR. So for instance, ground floor uses, which includes a very expansive set of uses per council's previous direction. So restaurants, breweries, retail, office, residential are fully exempt FAR at the ground floor, and 50% is exempted when located on the second floor. So the end result is that the actual maximum FAR will be greater than 5.0, even with any reductions due to critical areas, if you do count this exempt FAR spaces. So back to this this table, option A does include a first tier amenity list of affordable housing for residential, open space, childcare, potential street for non-residential, and a second tier list also. There is no DA option for this option A, just because at that time we didn't have any direction from council to include a DA. Option B is what staff is recommending forward. It has the same base and max FAR as in the draft code. The first tier amenity options are also the same. In the second tier, however, we've added 3 amenities, so pedestrian bridge, special amenity, and performing arts. These are in red font color. And then under the DA items, we've added 4 different provisions that could be departed from. So maximum height, maximum FAR, non-conforming requirements, and then adding a special amenity. The last row here shows what the stakeholders have requested. Again, we've highlighted in red what are some of the differences between what stakeholders have been asking for and then what the our recommended option B includes. So one more slide before I turn over to Nick to go through some of the more detailed information. I did want to show this. We wanted to show this non-residential FAR context. As you see on the map here, just north of the East Main site is downtown OLB South, and there's a 4.5 as the base non-residential FAR and a 5.0 maximum FAR, again, non-residential. Going counterclockwise, again, this is just to show the context of some of the other land use districts and the densities and the FAR base and maximum around the East Main area. Counterclockwise to DTOLB South is downtown MU, and this has a 4.5 as well as a 5.0 maximum, the same as for non-residential, the same as downtown OLB South. And just below that are the overlays, B3 overlay and A3 overlay. This is directly across the street from Surrey Downs. Single family neighborhood, of course, as you know, it is scaled way down for non-residential. It has a 1.5 a base FAR and a maximum of 1.5, again, for non-residential development. And of course, East Main is also across the street from Surrey Downs and just lays to the east of Surrey Downs. And we have currently in the draft code, and what staff is recommending is a 2.5 base FAR and a 5.0 max FAR for non-residential. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation to Nick Whipple to go into more detail about these options on base non-residential FAR, amenity options, and DA items. Nick?
Thank you, Trisna, and good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Noonhouse, and City Council. As Trisna mentioned, I'll be presenting information on the base FAR and amenity options, and then the use of development agreement tool as a follow-up to our October 4th council meeting. So at the last council meeting, there was a lot of discussion around the base FAR and questions about what the effect of increasing the non-residential base FAR from 2.5, which is the recommended base FAR, to 3.5, and what that effect would be on the voluntary incentive zoning program. So as a reminder, the light blue color above the base FAR is showing where the voluntary incentive program would be used. It's in that light blue area where public benefits would be provided in exchange for floor area up to the maximum allowable floor area, which the draft has a maximum allowable floor area of 5 FAR. So if the light blue area gets smaller, then the amount of public benefits that would be provided through the incentive program will also decrease. So there was an economic analysis completed very recently within the past 10 months by the city's consultant, Eco Northwest, to recommend where the base FAR or the as of right FAR should be set. The draft LUCA does follow the report recommendations to set the base FAR at 2.5 for non-residential development, which is 5 times higher than what the current zoning allowance in OLB would be. The report also indicates that any base FAR above a 2.5 for non-residential use may rule out large-scale use of the incentive system, which would not deliver the public benefits sought by the council. So in this slide, we are providing a hypothetical example of sample amenities that may be provided to achieve floor area. The numbers that you're seeing here, the square footages, are relating to the Hilton and the Red Lion parcels. So it does assume that 2.5 FAR would be earned through the provision of this list of amenities on the left here. So open space, potential streets, a couple childcare uses, public art, enhanced streetscape, and stream restoration. So bear in mind that the developer may already build just over 1 million square feet of office development without meeting the threshold to provide the public benefits that we're seeing on the left side there. Next slide, please. So this slide illustrates what's likely to happen if the base FAR is increased by 1 FAR. So essentially almost 500,000 square feet on top of the million plus square feet in the draft code would be provided without an exchange for public benefits or requirement to provide public benefits. So the developer will not have to earn as much floor area to reach the maximum development potential on the site. So with that, you would see fewer benefits provided, and we're seeing a reduction in the amount of open space and potential streets that would be provided as well through the incentive zoning program. Next slide, please. So this slide is it's showing the calculation that a developer would make to decide how they want to earn building square footage above the base FAR. So we can see from the total circled in each table that the FAR is less, the amount of FAR they need to earn is less with the base set at 3.5. The first table is showing the base FAR at 2.5. It does show a majority of the square footage being earned through the open space, potential streets, and childcare uses, which are proposed as tier 1 amenities for non-residential development in East Main. And in fact, almost 80% of the square footage is earned just from the 2 amenity options, the open space and the potential streets in this example for the Red Lion and the Hilton parcel. So 2 amenities could provide potentially 80% of the floor area that they would be needing to move on to that remaining tier where they have an expanded list of amenity options. Those same 2 amenities we can see in the example below with the base FAR increased to 3.5. Those 2 amenities are enough to earn 100% of the square footage above the base FAR. Next slide, please. So this is just a side-by-side comparison of the draft LUCA recommendation and the stakeholder request and what the 2 options would provide in terms of use of the amenity incentive program. So as mentioned earlier, as the light blue area above the base FAR gets smaller, then the amount of floor area that would be earned through the incentive program reduces, so that the developer would not need to provide as many public amenities in exchange for building a bigger project. Next slide, please. So we have just two more slides to walk through here. So the amenity options are the red text, as Trisna mentioned earlier with the summarized table of options, shows what's been added since the draft code was published. And what we have here are additional options. These were directed by council and also suggested by Wig Properties. Councilmember Barksdale also raised a comment at the last study session about mom and pop shops or small business spaces as a potential amenity that could be added to the list of options in the table here. Staff has included the special amenity or the flexible amenity as it's referred to in downtown to this list of options, which could provide for small business spaces as a public benefit for East Main. This would be an efficient way to advance this type of amenity now under the framework of a special amenity. And then we could continue to explore a more fixed or defined small business amenity option for the land use code in future initiatives, such as Wilburton, if that's amenable to council. The draft LUCA also allocates amenities in a way that provides a focus on open space, potential streets, and childcare as a top priority for non-residential developments. That's the first tier column that you're seeing. And then affordable housing as a top priority for residential development within the TOD. So this same method of prioritizing neighborhood-specific amenities has been implemented in downtown as well as Bell Red. Essentially, a developer must choose from a more focused list of amenities to earn most of the building square footage before moving on to the remaining options on the list. So for this slide, we were referring to those kind of priorities as first tier and second tier. The options are all provided based on council direction, previous council direction, as well as priorities identified by council through the comprehensive plan. So the effect of adding additional amenities or moving additional amenities from the second tier into the first tier would provide developers more choices to earn the bulk of their building square footage, but it may also result in other top tier amenities not getting built. Or as shown in that hypothetical example, if the base FAR was increased, then really the first tier amenities would be what's built for the TOD. So again, yeah, adding more items into tier one doesn't necessarily mean that those amenities would be built, but this list is available for council discussion to choose those priorities. Next slide, please. And so on the last topic, staff is recommending the use of a development agreement option to consider developer requests for additional building height beyond what the code would allow, as well as additional floor area above what the maximum allowance is in the code. Council also indicated an interest in ensuring the Bellevue Athletic Club may continue operating and potentially expand without being subject to all aspects of the draft code. So staff is recommending the use of a development agreement to consider proposals for non-conforming situations when they reach a certain threshold. And we have a conversation planned for November 1st on that topic. And a special amenity was also added to the list, so the DA tool would be used to accommodate developer proposed amenities not identified in the list of 11 options from that previous slide. And in exchange for these departures, affordable housing and other city developer negotiated public benefits would be provided. Stakeholder Wig Properties has requested a development agreement tool for a few additional items that are listed in red. So the Catalyst project, which is something we have in the Bell Red land use district, departures from the open space requirements, and then other code provisions as needed. In exchange, they've suggested that SEPA be the only requirement. And just for council and the public's information, SEPA is a process requirement that would be applicable to a development agreement regardless. So staff, we do support the use of development agreements for departing from specific requirements, such as height, FAR, non-conforming provisions, and the special amenity as reflected in the staff recommendation. Staff does not support providing an option to negotiate different provisions of the land use code as needed through the development agreement, but rather identify specific provisions in the code to narrow those deal points for future contract negotiation. And of course, in doing this, identifying specific departures does result in more predictability for the future developer, the public, and the city during the development review process. So now I'll turn this presentation back to Mike to conclude. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. So again, I'm trying to provide some additional information, respond to questions the council asked on October 4th. We are here this evening to answer any additional questions the council may have and are seeking council direction on these 3 topic areas. Mayor?
Thank you. All right. I'm trying to make a note-taking grid here so I can keep track of what everybody says. And thank you for that presentation. It's great. So the land use code amendment is for all of East Maine. The development agreement is for a particular development, right? Mike?
So the development agreement would be a tool that would be allowed for those departures within all of the East Maine area. So not just for a specific developer, but the developer or the property owner or developer could take the option of a development agreement for additional height or additional FAR with additional public benefits.
Right, but the development agreement is specific to the development that's applying for it.
That is correct, yes.
And the land use code amendment is kind of a global for all of East Maine.
That's correct, yes.
So I just want to make that clear. And so I'm going to call in an order on people in a certain order so that I can take notes. And I'm going to start with Councilmember Zahn. Do you have comments or questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to appreciate staff continuing to work with the Wigs and Bellevue Club, understanding their needs and threading a needle between what the city's wants and needs are and the developer. And I also appreciate the side-by-side comparison between the 2.5 and the 3.5 FAR for the non. Being able to see, I think, was really important. So thank you for doing that. I agree with the consistency with Bell Red with the condos at the 100% AMI. I wanted to make sure that I understood.
Janice,
public comment
council members on.
Yes.
You're kind of cutting in and out. So we're missing a little bit of what you're saying.
Okay, I'll get a little closer to my laptop.
Okay.
How about now? Is it okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, the public comment about the street width over the stream of 30 feet and the block length, will those be the next item, or will that be addressed at the next item? Just wanted to check in on that. And then I wanted to understand the Eastside Housing Roundtable asked about a performance and fee in lieu. And I wasn't sure I completely understood what that meant, because we are trying to create affordable housing right here in East Maine. So were they relating more to the commercial part of this code that we're developing? And then my final comments are, I would be concerned with diluting the tier 1 if we too many more tier 1. And I support the DA to work through some of these additional items with the developer on the individual properties. And so the staff recommendation of option B. But if you could understand the one question from the Eastside Housing Roundtable, that would be helpful. Thank you.
So try to respond. So the letter from Eastside Housing Roundtable, we just received that just before the council meeting this evening. So we haven't had a chance to really digest that and interpret it or go back and ask for clarification. But I think the key issue that they were raising there was a fee in lieu. They were noting for both residential and commercial. Residential is a concept that we do have in the land use code in other areas of the city. Commercial fee in lieu is not something that we currently have in the land use code. So there would be some significant additional work to actually put together that particular alternative here. But again, we have not seen the work from the chamber. So just speculation right now on what that might be. So we will need to take a look at it when it arrives. The other question regarding the road, council members on. So the road, we don't have that as an alternative or as a discussion at an upcoming council meeting. We could certainly do that. The road standards are essentially administered through transportation. We deal with both the transportation needs, but also the impacts from critical areas and the balancing that has to happen when we do a development review and decide what is appropriate in trying to ensure we're meeting all of those interests. So it's a little challenging to actually dive into what's an appropriate road profile without having a development and understanding really the specifics that we're dealing with respect to the critical area. But again, we will, through the development review process, look at all of that and determine what is an appropriate configuration.
Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Newhouse.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank staff as well for the great presentation and continue to move this along on this timetable here and working so closely with all the stakeholders. Really appreciate that ongoing work. A couple of quick questions for you. Number one, and I'm just referring now to the, and I'm sure staff's had a chance to look at it, the letter that came in from the Wigs, from the stakeholders here. I wanted to just draw one thing to your attention, and that's regarding the child care size limit. Just knowing that such, I believe, an urgent need in our city. And I think it also, as well as an urgent item for this entire council to create more childcare in the city of Bellevue. Is it accurate that the amenity points awarded is limited to 10,000 square feet for a childcare business, or can it be much larger as indicated here for 15,000 square feet?
Nick, do you want to handle that question?
Sure. Yes, Deputy Mayor, thank you for the question. So the current draft has a limit on the amount of bonusable square footage for childcare service uses. So certainly daycares 15,000 square feet or even larger could be provided in East Main, but the amount of bonusable area is capped at 10,000 per building. So okay. in the scenarios we presented to council, it does assume 2 daycares totaling 20,000 square feet provided, and that would achieve the full bonus. But the bonus is really just limited to 10,000 square feet for bonusable.
Okay, well then I would suggest that we take a look at expanding that to 15. I just don't know what the options are to have 2 different childcare facilities with and both at 10,000 when, you know, when my daughter went to childcare, most of those places were at least 15,000. So rather than having 2, it might be better just to have 1 at 20,000 or 15 to 20,000 versus 2 to get there on those bonusable points. So just wanted to raise that issue. And then really appreciate the map in there comparing the other downtown codes or to the downtown code. And on the amenities piece, how many amenities in tier 1 would a developer be able to select if they were in OLB South, for example? How many amenity options do they have in tier 1 compared to the 3 that's currently being advocated for in this proposal?
Nick, do you want to, I don't know the answer to that one, Nick. I'm going to call for some help on that.
Yeah, so the stakeholders were correctly noting 9 options for downtown. And those are all public realm related options. So open space, the Grand Connection is in there. Major public open spaces, which is a key piece along the Grand Connection, is also included in there. So 9 options aren't necessarily available to all of the downtown, but there are certainly 9 options that are kind of considered in that first 75%.
Okay, well, as someone likes to give different options, and we were talking about incentivizing, and I think a lot of these amenities are important and will have a public benefit. I would certainly like to see that pedestrian bridge and the performing arts moved over into tier 1 to give the stakeholder some additional thoughts. It's going to take quite a bit for them to accrue those points anyways, I think, and I appreciate the examples that you gave there as well, Nick, but I am more in favor of 3.5 for both non-residential and residential. But if my colleagues are more set on 2.5, I'm okay with that, but I would like to really increase a number of amenities that the developer could select from this. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Thanks to staff for looping back on the mom and pop shop amenity. That sounds good. And then for showing the difference between the 2.5 and 3.5 for the question I had last time. I think we sort of started to touch on that, on clarifying the point that came up during public comment. Can you speak to, is there a limitation or challenge with getting all of the amenity points with the 3? Is that can you just speak to that?
So Councilmember Barksdale, at least in the example that we had provided, if the base FAR was set at 2.5, 80% of the amenity points could be earned through providing 4 potential streets, which are going to be used to meet the minimum block size requirements, and 40,000 square feet of open space, so less than an acre of open space, which would be required as part of the 10% open space requirement. So with those 2 amenities, they would achieve 80% of the floor area that would be needed to move on to the next tier.
Got it. Okay, the other questions I had were already addressed. Thank you for clarifying.
Councilmember Robertson.
Thanks. So I'll start with where the colleague that spoke before me just left off on the amenities and on the FAR base. So I do agree with Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Neuenhuis about that we should have more amenities brought up to the tier 1. I think that the pedestrian bridge that connects the light rail station across 112th to this property, which is going to be a very busy, activated, transit-oriented development, should definitely be on tier 1. I really want to see that built. I want to incentivize it. It's going to be expensive, and I would like to see that built. So, as well as the Performing Arts Center as well. I know that Councilmember Stoke spoke passionately about that last session. So I also am still inclined towards 3.5 as a base. If the council decides to do 2.5, and we could also just do 3 as a compromise if we're kind of still split on that. But if we do 2.5, I think it's even more important that we have options in the amenities system. We already decided on height. On FAR, I wanted to ask Trisna a question. One of the things that I've spoken about is if we don't maximize the density on this site, it will be a miss. It will be a fumble. Unforced error, if you will. So I want to make sure that we are doing the land use code such that we can have max density reached with reasonable costs, where it's still going to pencil for the developer. We'll see this in the relatively near term. And so the full 5 FAR, I know that there's additional FAR potentially available through DA, but I want to be reassured that there is still the full 5 FAR available. And Trisna spoke about some uncounted space. So if you take that uncounted space and you count it, would this site be able to develop with the full 5 FAR given the critical area? So that's a question.
So thanks, Councilmember Robertson, for that question. So I did speak about exempt FAR. So these are spaces and areas that would not be counted. The square footage would not be counted towards calculating FAR. We don't have information on the exact size of the critical areas or buffers or any of those kind of that detail of information. So in our estimation, however, if there are ground floor uses as well as second floor spaces that are exempted at 50%. There would be, you would be able to accomplish at least 5 or even beyond the 5 if you ended up kind of counting the exempt FAR as part of your FAR. So we believe that you could, the development could accomplish that. However, we don't have the full information. We don't have a development proposal. Obviously, we don't have any of the critical area information. So we don't have that certainty to be able to tell you.
I'm very interested in seeing the full 5. So then on the DA, I also support the 100% AMI on ownership housing that Councilmember Zahn spoke about. On the DA, I do support what the staff has put forward, as well as greater flexibility. We don't know if there's something that we might want to flex later. So I'm interested in having a little bit more than just the very constrained list. Now I want to talk a little bit about schedule, because in looking at the attachment B, there's some items the council hasn't decided about that don't look like they're coming back. And that is the housing minimum. At the housing minimum, we had a discussion about that. We didn't make a decision. And I'm wondering when that's coming back, because we need to make a decision, particularly after we get the Eco Northwest report. I'm also still open to considering the amenity of affordable housing for commercial based on the Eco Northwest report, as well as fee in lieu. So I don't know if we need to add a session, another session, so we can meet the November 15th deadline or not. And before you answer, I'll just weigh in and say also I support expanding the childcare to that 15,000. The pandemic has shown us how much we need more childcare. So can someone, maybe Director Brennan, can address the schedule, because council didn't make a decision on housing minimum. So
the code is in its entirety is essentially open for council consideration, as you know, until you finally adopt it. Is generally how it goes. So if the council would like to have some additional discussion about fee in lieu or any additional information, like the chamber noted in their letter today, it will take more time. There's really no question about that. As far as what we've got on the calendar right now, we've got 2 meetings in November and another meeting in early December. And it's probably about all we're going to be able to get in this year before we go to holiday break. So most likely, if we do want to have a more robust conversation about the minimum housing and some additional information that the chamber we're anticipating receiving from the chamber, we will anticipate scheduling some additional time in January to complete the work.
Okay, so, but on the housing minimum, when that was on our agenda, we talked about it, and if I remember correctly, we were told it would come back for a decision. It was a discuss it, but don't make a decision. So it doesn't seem like it's actually teed up for a decision. So I'm really concerned about that, because council hasn't weighed in as a body on that.
Yeah, so we absolutely will, at the next meeting, we can frame that question for you as well, Councilmember Robertson. As far as the housing, I think that, as well as the fee in lieu information, I think are areas that I've heard several council members express an interest in. So we'll try to figure out how do we incorporate that into the upcoming discussions.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, Councilmember Stokes.
Very interesting discussion so far. I really appreciate the staff's work on this and laying it out the way you have. Right at the beginning, let me just make clear, I'm in favor of the 2.5, 3.5, and I understand all the concerns that have been raised and back and forth, but and I appreciate very much and agree on a number of comments have been made by my colleagues before me speaking here. And yes, Councilor Robertson, I am passionate about performing arts, and performing arts and this art, public art can be part of that. I think that's something that will, again, this is an area of the city, we need this. And so that, to me, that's a really important thing, and something that I think if I were the developer, I would be really excited about doing this and making this part of the community. I think, I think we've got this laid out very well. I agree with the recommendations. I do think that we, need to look at this expanding the first tier, how we do that exactly. I'm not saying that the pedestrian bridge is the absolute thing we have to have. I'm real interested in that. And that's one of those things where we're going to have to look at the cost and all that. But moving some things over, I think, is a good thing to do. But I'm very comfortable basically with what staff has laid out on this. And I think it's all been part of a long conversation that we're getting a lot closer together on. And reading over what the Chamber or the East Side Housing Consortium has proposed, just in the first go through it, I think they've really done an outstanding job, and I think they made it very clear. They proposed the 2.5, 3.5. I think they show a lot how we can expand and make this project really do a lot more than we're talking about to a certain extent. And I agree we should talk about and add the items that were just that Mike was talking about, finding some room. And I think we can do it this year and have the conversation. I don't think it's going to be a big conversation on those additional items, because I think we're all coming together on this and trying to just get the best thing going. And frankly, if we could get this done by the end of the year and the developer could get going with the DA and they could start their project and put this great thing, something that's not just a twinkle in somebody's eye, but a reality that comes about. And we have a lot more things to move on to. So let's see if we can do that. That would be really great. I certainly, and my daughter would not be happy with me if I did not champion the child care to the footage that it needs. And so, early learning and child care is a big thing she works on in her real work. So I'm very happy with this. I think it's like anything else. You have to get to a certain part. There's some compromises, some things we worked out. It's been a long time, and it's time to get this done. I think staff has responded very, very well, very aggressively, very thoughtfully. And we've had great discussions on this, and I'm confident that if we get this put in place as it is now, we will have a great development in that area. And I think we're going to be all, I'm looking forward to the first big event in one of those places. And I think we're looking at that whole area. And I do like the way we're approaching it with the other parts of the area as well. So let's get this wrapped up and move on.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. We've been at this for a long time, and I thank the staff for staying there with us and did a lot of work. I support 3.5, 3.5, 5.0. The reason is that we all agree with the amenities. I mean, we have the same goals. We want to see these things happen. And, I mean, we have different ideas, obviously, but we have to come to a realistic agreement, which I think we are getting to it if we're not already there. I believe we are. I mean, I could say, gee, I like to have a quarter center actually on site as a joke, or Taj Mahal, right? But no, we are asking those. We're asking the real things that we want, amenities that's benefiting the city, our people, such as childcare centers, such as, pedestrian bridge, such as the culture center, whatever. So it's a matter of how we get that. And I think by giving them the opportunity to do it, that's giving them incentives. But it's the way it sounded to me, it's like we are actually blackmailing them. We said, at least you build them, we're not going to give you this. No, let's say that we will give you this. Then we can encourage to build it. It's because, it's in good faith. We have to work with people we trust, good partners. It's a partnership. They have to build it, and we make sure we get incentives, right? Which is good for us. So they don't know for sure. If they don't know for sure, then we can come up with an agreement, exactly what it is. But as we know, there are uncertainties. We talk about sensitive areas, so we really don't know what the cost would be. We don't know cost of money. We don't know cost of labor. So until they actually start doing the project, we're not going to know. So I think it's a question of how do we get to the point that they feel they can build it, and we feel that we can get our amenities. I believe
Councilmember Lee, can I ask you a specific question?
Yeah.
Could you tell us which base FAR you're going for? Which
I just said that first thing, 3.5, 3.5, 5.0. This is the first thing I said.
Okay, and then which amenities you would like to have?
I don't care what amenities. We agree with a lot of them. I care. I want all of them. Whichever we agree. As I said, we can argue about each one. I want the Taj Mahal and the Aquatic Center all thrown in there. But that's not going to happen. So we want what we can, realistically, what the developer can do. That's it. We don't know what it is until we get the project going. Until we know how much it takes to put that bridge over the 6 foot, whatever wide, no, 60 feet wide. We don't know that. It's all, we have 2 cost comparison studies. We don't know what it is, right? So how do we know? There's a lot of uncertainties. The only way we can address uncertainty is we have to work by good faith, not by blackmail. Good faith is that we negotiate development agreement. We know we are dealing with people in good faith. Okay, if they cannot do it, nothing much we can do about it. If they can do it, they may add more. If the cost is not as much, if they say, hey, our cost estimate is higher than we expected, they're throwing in more amenities. I love that. So I'm not going to nitpick. All right.
Okay.
But
I got your response. Thank you.
And I may come up with a few. If they prove that, gee, we got lots of money left over, we can do more. Then in that case, at that time, I say, gee, I'd like to have the Aquatic Center to be included there.
Okay, thank you.
That's the point.
So I'm going to go ahead.
I don't think that I'm not suggesting it's going to put in there. Just to be clear. But this is the approach I want to use to make sure that we get things going, get it done.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to take my turn here. And I'm going to say that I am very interested in looking at, as an amenity for non-residential, the potential for the fee in lieu for affordable housing, because I think it would be a real missed opportunity not to include that in this and in all the rest of our development properties. There's the potential for the owner to carve off a portion of the property and use that in partnership with an affordable housing developer to really do deep affordable housing there. And that could be the fee in lieu. So I do want us to consider that. And I think Eco Northwest would be good to work with on that. We won't be the first city to do that. So then when we talk about the streets, whether they're the required or the potential, I think you alluded to this, but I do want to have the configuration of whether it's ped, bike, straight, or curved, that all be in the development agreement. I don't think that should have to be predicted before the development is completely baked. And then I'm a little conflicted with this 100% AMI condos. The home ownership is great, but that just doesn't feel like real affordable housing to me. It's certainly more affordable than some of the other things being built in Bellevue nowadays, so I get that. But geez, we're right across the street from a light rail station. I would hope that we could get 80% AMI or less. So I think I'm going to leave that with there. And if the developer wants to do an additional housing with some 100% AMI or more condos, that's fine. I mean, they can do that, but I'd like to have at least some 80% AMI in there. And I'm all for increasing the amenities. So the one I said about the affordable housing fee in lieu for non-residential, I'd like to add that. As I understand it, the childcare size, it's not that they can't build it bigger, it's just they don't get the points beyond a certain size. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's the way it's structured now.
Yeah. So
Can we change that?
we definitely want to have childcare. I think that's a priority for all of us. And if it needs to be a certain size, I want to make sure we don't restrict that. But I'm not sure that the way it's written actually restricts it right now. I like the pedestrian bridge added to a tier 1. I like performing arts and public art added to tier 1. And I guess that's it for me. And I'm for the 2535 base FAR. So does this make sense to you guys, to Trisna and Mike and Mac? Does what we and Nick do, what is the feedback making sense to you? Because I've written it all down and I can read it back to you, but you've probably gotten it.
I think I've taken notes as well, Mayor. I think I'm going to need a little more clarity on the 2535 to make sure. I don't know that I got everybody, so right. I don't want to take a misstep there if I've counted.
No, that's fine, and I mean that's something we can vote on because that's pretty clear. So do you want us to vote on that right now and just get that out of the way and then go through the other things? That'd be helpful.
You can take a vote or give us a consensus, whatever works for you, Mayor, works for us.
Is there a motion to do base FAR at 2.5 for non-residential and 3.5 for residential for the East Main land use?
I move to direct.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm going to direct staff to incorporate option B for base FAR of 2.5 for non-residential and 3.5 for residential development.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
No. Oh, I think Conrad voted no.
So I see Councilmember Robertson and Councilmember Lee are no, and then the other 5 are yes. Is that correct? Okay, so that's that. Sorry.
Mayor, can I make a motion on the amenities?
Well, let's make sure that we don't want to discuss this anymore, but yes, you may when we get there. So where are you with that, Mike?
So I heard, and I'll do my best here. So I heard an interest in expanding the daycare use. The request that we received from the stakeholders was to go to 15,000 square feet at their suggestion. I heard an interest in adding performing arts to tier 1 and a ped bridge to tier 1, but I'm not quite sure I have the majority of the council over there, but those are two that I heard. I also heard an interest in wanting to explore a fee in lieu for commercial use, which is we don't have any information on that yet. So that one's a little difficult to add in to the list without a little further study there, Mayor.
Yeah, let's bring that one back. Maybe we can have a special session just for that. But are the amenities consistent with residential and non-residential, or are we looking at them separately?
So I think it's been relatively clear that the residential, the tier 1 residential is affordable housing, which is in line with the council direction. I think it's the commercial tiers that have been the point of discussion, whether to add to pull some of those options from tier 2 up into tier 1.
So the residential amenity tier 1 would only be affordable housing?
That's correct.
Okay. And so I'm asking that that be at 80% AMI, and I'd like council's feedback on that. We'll get back to that. And then for the non-residential, we'll come back with a potential to put the fee in lieu on that. And then we're looking at the performing arts, the public art, the larger child care facility, the pedestrian bridge, and 100% AMI condos. Is that right? No, because this is non-residential. So condos are in the residential.
That's correct.
Yeah. And yeah, okay, so we can take that separately. Okay. And then what about the streets and stuff? Is that that's part of the amenities system, right? That you...
So it is, yeah. So the use of the streets they're bonusable for the potential streets, which are the streets that are at the discretion of the developer. Those are bonusable. Those are a tier 1 amenity.
For non-residential?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, all right. Can you put a slide up that shows me? Because I've got all this paper.
I think it would be useful to put the table that shows both the residential, non-residential, and the amenity list.
Would you do that, please?
That would be helpful, yes.
Thank you. Okay. Well, there you go. That's what I needed. It's not good doing this off my memory. Okay. Child care larger. And then pedestrian moved into tier 1 of non-residential, pedestrian bridge, performing arts, and special amenities. Okay. All right. So, so it might be helpful to take these one at a time and just see if we want to move these into, we're looking at starting with the non-residential first tier amenities. So we already have the open space, the potential streets, but we're looking at making the child care larger. And so is there, we could do a motion or we can just do head nods. I felt like there was a consensus on increasing the size of the child care. Is it to 15,000 or is it 1,500? What was it?
15,000 square feet.
15 square feet. So can you just nod your head if you're okay with that?
Mayor, I had a question.
Go ahead.
I just want to clarify because now we are adding potentially 3 more amenities to tier 1.
Yep.
So for the childcare, we're not saying that we are prohibiting anyone from building 15,000, right? It's only that the first 10,000 is part of the amenities, because I am concerned about the level of dilution of the amenities when we move potentially 3 more over here and increase the amenity points for the childcare. It's one thing to say that potentially it will be built anyway. It's another to say that we're going to dilute the incentive bonus points that are being provided. So I just want to clarify that before we vote on all these.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not saying that we would be, that we're prohibiting anyone from building larger childcare. It's just how many points they would get. Is that right, staff?
That's correct. The way it's currently structured, it would be bonusable up to 10,000 square feet per childcare in a building. Beyond that, you could build it like you noted, Councilmember Zahn, but the additional square foot wouldn't gain you any FAR bonus.
Okay, so then the market gets to decide what the childcare size might be, as it should be. Thank you.
So what's your proposal, Councilmember Zahn?
Well, I think that if we're going to be voting in these other three amenities so that it doesn't dilute it to the point where these other amenities aren't going to happen, that we keep the childcare the same if we're going to vote in pedestrian bridge, performing arts, and special amenity.
Okay, well, let's take a vote on the childcare size. Let's vote on, pardon?
I just had a question. I thought I heard that they were actually proposing two 10,000 square feet sites.
So Nick, you want to explain the example again real quick?
Yeah, so Councilmember Stokes, there's no proposal right now for childcare use in the example that staff provided to just show, some sample of amenities the developer could choose to reach the maximum FAR. In that specific example, staff chose to provide within the Hilton and the Red Lion parcel 2 childcare service uses to earn, towards their maximum FAR. And in that case, we maxed out the childcare service for those 2 properties so that you'd have 20,000 square feet total provided for the Red Lion and Hilton property to earn the FAR that was needed in the first tier. So it's just an example though.
Okay, so that's, we're not considering that. Where'd the 15,000 come from? Is that solid then, or is that just an example?
No, that's increasing the point system to 15,000 square feet on a childcare site instead of 10,000. You could have 2 15,000
okay.
if you wanted.
What I'm trying to ask, because it is confusing, because if you're talking about potential of 2 10,000 feet sites, that's 20,000, and that eats into the amenities more, or for other things. And you're saying that that's kind of just a conversation, but is the 10,000 that we're debating over raising to 15,000, is that absolutely set in concrete? Or is that just another, we think that's a good size?
So
go ahead, Nick, you can answer.
Okay, so stakeholder Wig Properties has suggested the 15,000 square feet as the amount that the city should provide bonus square footage for. So right now it's capped at 10,000 square feet in the draft code. If 15,000 were selected, you could still have 2 childcare service uses provided at 15,000 square feet apiece, and then it would be 30,000 square feet bonusable. So just following kind of that same example, we don't put a cap on the amount of childcare use that can be provided in earning those bonuses, other than 1 per building. So they could have multiple childcare service uses within the TOD, each earning whatever council decides is the appropriate amount of square footage to give bonus for. So if that's 10,000 or 15,000, that would be what the developer could choose to do.
But whatever that came up to, whether it's 15,000 or 30,000, that eats into the other amenity options, or not?
Right.
If it doesn't, why don't we just go ahead and say 15 and be done with it?
So
it's confused. It doesn't seem to mesh when you talk about it.
Yeah. So the bonusable points that you put into tier 1, if you put in additional options, your point is correct. Then the possibility of getting all of those things that are there is lower, meaning it can be, I think the term Councilmember Zahn used was diluted. It gives more options, but if you're trying to hit a specific target, your opportunity to actually hit that specific target gets a little bit less. Not saying that all of those things aren't valuable. It's really a values discussion for the council. What do you want to achieve from the land use code and using this incentive system? What are those highest priority outcomes that you would like to see as part of the development? And that's what you bonus, and then that's generally what gets built.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I just wanted to, I didn't want us to come up, 2 weeks from now and say, wow, we didn't realize that actually we doubled it and we decreased the other opportunities more. And I don't
Let's
know.
hear from Councilmember Robertson. She's had her hand up and add to the conversation. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So I support adding it to the 15,000. And I understand that that means that more points are gettable in the first tier for childcare. But I heard the last time we discussed this, I heard all of my colleagues strongly support incentivizing childcare. And if the market size for childcare centers is closer to 15,000 or larger, then if we don't right size the incentive to incentivize the full 15,000, then I think we reduce the chance that we will actually get childcare built on the site, because they might be able to get more amenity points. If there's something that they can build and get full amenity points for building it, they're going to do that rather than building something that they only get, 2/3 of the amenity points for based on the market size. So for me, I think this seems like a no-brainer. If we support childcare, which I do, I think we should do it based on the size that we expect to actually have built. Rather than trying to, I think that dilutes the chance of getting childcare if we don't right size it. So I'm absolutely in favor of adding that. Thanks.
Councilmember Zahn, do you have a counterpoint?
No, actually, after listening to my colleagues, I support this piece. I think I had questions about what this meant, and it's helpful for me to understand, but it does then drive how I would vote for the subsequent ones if we are talking about trying not to dilute from the very things we care about. And if we're going to increase care because it's important to us, thank you.
Yeah. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a motion, actually, Councilmember Robertson was making. And so why don't we go on with that?
Okay, I like it.
Okay, so I'll make a motion. I move to change childcare in the first tier to bonusable up to 15,000 square feet in size for each childcare.
Second.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we got through that.
So should I just put the pedestrian bridge on the table, Mayor?
Well, I'm hacking down my list here. The next one I have is, I was going to go performing arts, public arts. We did the childcare facilities, then pedestrian bridge, then the AMI. But sure, let's go pedestrian bridge next.
Okay, I move to add pedestrian bridge to tier 1 of the non-residential development incentive list.
Second.
Second.
Any comments or questions on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Councilmember Barksdale, is that an aye or a question?
It's more of a comment. I mean, I can say where the other one is that I would support. Everything else I'm not going to support, and that would be affordable housing. So
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying.
I was just going to comment that I don't think we need to bring all of them over. I think the only other one that would make sense, given past conversations that we've had in general as a council in terms of priorities, would be affordable housing. So that's the only other one I would support.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is, by starting the base FAR as low as we've chosen to do it, there's more room for amenities, but the dilution that council members use that phrase is good because you have less chance of getting one of your amenities if it's really important to you. But we'd have to see a whole table of the likelihood of getting what we're trying on, and we just don't really have the time anymore. We've been hashing through this for so long.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I would support the expansion of childcare and affordable housing, is to allow more opportunity for them to earn those points.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right. All in favor of the pedestrian bridge being tier 1 amenity, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. So council members on and Barksdale, no. All right. The next one is
No.
Councilmember Stokes has his hand up.
Councilmember Stokes, did you? Yes. What's your comment? Question?
I just, did you catch my vote? I said no.
Oh, you did. Okay. All right. The next one is performing arts. Moving that to the forefront. Is there a motion, Councilmember Stokes? You want to make a motion on that one?
You're on mute.
I'm sorry,
Stokes.
you're muted. Yeah.
I was trying to get out of that. Yeah, I moved to move performing arts from second tier to first tier.
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Nay.
No.
Okay. Councilmember Barksdale.
Mayor, this is the city clerk. I'm sorry. With these votes, we really need an audible, a voice vote.
I know, I'm trying to get it
Okay,
right now.
Thank you.
So let's just say, go through. Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
You voted yes. Councilmember Robertson?
Yes.
Councilmember Zahn?
No.
Councilmember Barksdale? What did you vote?
I just muted. No.
Okay. Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Newhouse?
Yes.
And I voted no. All right, so you got 3 to 4. All right, public art. Is there a motion for public art? To move public art to tier 1 amenity. Okay.
Motion.
Go ahead, Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, I move that we move public art from the second tier to first tier.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All right. Councilmember Stokes, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Robertson?
No.
Councilmember Zahn?
No.
Councilmember Barksdale?
No.
Councilmember Lee?
No.
Deputy Mayor?
No.
I vote yes. I have a reason for that. Okay. And then the affordable housing. I don't know if I can make a motion as mayor, but if somebody would make a motion, I would like the motion to be that the affordable housing start at 80% AMI.
I move to allow for affordable housing to start at 80% AMI.
Second.
Can I ask a point of order?
Yes.
So already what is in the draft or option B is affordable housing rental will be at for 80% AMI. So is the motion to set, and if we don't take any action on ownership, that will also be at 80% AMI. So is the motion for the rental, because I think we're already doing that. The request was that the stakeholder and staff supported was to allow ownership to be at 100% AMI. So I don't understand the motion.
Well, that's a good question. I guess my concern, I'll speak to it, is that I'm concerned that instead of having rental, there'll be ownership at 100% AMI instead of rental if we allow both to be in the tier 1. So I'm not interested in having 100% home ownership in tier 1. So this would just be for rental in tier 1 and leaving home ownership at 100%. If it's home ownership at 80%, I'm okay with that.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lee.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. We need to make sure that we have flexibility. The only question I have here is, this reflected ownership 100%, rental 80% gives the develop some flexibility. You know, in the event that, you know, rental is very high in demand and in need, and they will have a lot of units in rental. If nobody, you know, if you know, it depends on the market. Is a market for condo or market for rental? And if there's you know, so I believe that it gives them alternative flexibility, and they can accommodate both. I think that's a good thing.
Okay, so the motion, I'm just looking at a motion that would reflect that any affordable housing in tier 1 would be at 80% AMI, whether it's rental or home ownership. So if someone wants to make a motion.
I move to allow for affordable housing at tier 1 at 80% AMI.
When you say allow, does that limit it? Does that say at 80 or above? Or I just want to make sure that we're saying 80% max or 80% or lower AMI.
I can restate it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I move to add affordable housing to tier 1 at 80% AMI.
Second.
Or lower. Or lower. Thank you.
Second.
All right. Councilmember Stokes. How do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Robertson.
I vote no.
Councilmember Zahn.
Mayor, I did have a clarifying question. So what we're voting on is if I'm looking at this chart here, so tier 1 would be the 80% AMI rentals. And does that mean that the 100% AMI condos is tier 2? Or I just want to clarify what we're actually voting on.
That's what I proposed, that at 80% or lower AMI in tier 1 for rental or condo or home ownership. And then I'll take up, I mean, we can take up tier 2 if we want, but I'm suggesting the condo 100% AMI condos be in tier 2. So we're just talking about tier 1 at 80% or lower AMI.
Okay, then yes, thank you.
Councilmember Barksdale.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
No.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. So
then can we bring the condo, that if people want that to be in tier 2, I think we need to add it by motion.
Okay, why don't you make a motion?
And can I explain my vote? I supported 80% AMI for rental. I just thought that I want to encourage home ownership. So that's why I voted no on that if it was limited. So I would add to tier 2, 100% AMI for owner occupied units for the residential development in East Main.
Second.
I support that. I second it.
Okay, good. All right, any discussion or questions or comments? Councilmember Lee, your hand is up. Is that for a reason?
Sorry, I forgot to lower it.
All right.
Since my hand's up, since you asked me, I have the same reason like Councilman Robinson. I support the 80% AMI rental, absolutely. Yeah. So, but since we didn't get it at the 80% condo, I thought that it should be provided even in second tier. Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Stokes, how do you vote on tier 2, 100% AMI condos?
No.
Is that no?
That's no.
Okay. Councilmember Robertson.
Yes.
Councilmember Zahn.
Yes.
Councilmember Barksdale.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well.
I'll change my vote to yes. Make it unanimous.
Okay. Clerk, can we do that?
Yes, he can change to a yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So those are the things. What about special amenities? Did we want those in tier 1? Let me see. Special amenities are in tier 2, but they were asked to be moved over to tier 1. So does anybody want to make a motion to move special amenities over to tier 1?
I move to allow special amenities over to tier 1. Sorry, first tier.
Is there a second? Okay, so we won't carry that forward. We'll leave that in tier 2.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, council members on.
I just want to confirm the fee in lieu discussion, was that going to come after staff had a chance to look at it?
Yeah, I
So
think
it's
we're going to
not
have to
like
schedule a special meeting. It's
Thank
not
you.
a closed conversation. We just need to add that in so we can have
Okay.
time to look at it.
So, Mayor, just really, Mayor, for the next meeting, the residential fee in lieu was something that council did express an interest in. Now I'm hearing an interest based on the letter from the chamber, an interest in exploring a fee in lieu for commercial. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear.
Yes, that's what I proposed.
Okay. Okay, so we'll have to wait until we get that information. We're not producing that, so it's not on our schedule.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see what it is and do some assessment when we receive it.
That sounds good. Have we covered all the material that you need to get information on tonight, Mike?
I believe so. Rest of the team, are we any gaps or do we have what we need for these 3 topic areas this evening?
We have a confirmation on the DA items.
Yes. Do you have anything you can show me, a visual, Trisna?
You see the slide here, Mayor?
Oh yeah, I do see
Okay.
that. Okay, hold on everybody, a sec. Okay, that's a good idea. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, I had my hand up for this. Before we move to another thing, I think it would be good for everybody to understand and for the public to understand. Why don't you read off the yes items that are moving from second to first tier, just so it's
Mike,
clear.
Were you able to keep track of it? I have it written down.
I didn't. No, I'm sorry. I apologize, but it just seems more formal to say, okay, this is the vote.
No, Councilmember Stokes. I'm asking if Mike has it written down or if I shall say.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you asked me.
So the council moved the pedestrian bridge to tier 1 or the first tier. The council moved performing arts to the first tier. The council clarified under affordable housing that 80% rental affordable housing is considered bonusable in first tier, as well as 80% condominium would also be bonusable in the first tier. And then you added to the second tier in residential 100% AMI condominium or homeownership development. And that's what I have for my notes.
And we clarified that affordable housing is 80% AMI or less.
That's correct. 80% AMI or less in the first tier.
Yeah.
And the childcare was expanded.
And childcare to 15,000 square foot maximum bonusable.
And so public art is still in second tier. Right. So it's not like it didn't, it's not like it's no longer an amenity. It's just remains tier 2.
Right.
Okay. So now looking at the D, okay, yeah. So there are 3 requests from the stakeholders to make changes. And I had asked that the streets, where's my notes? Sorry. That the street configurations, whether that's required or potential, that be part of the development agreement as well. So Is there a motion to make, Mike, do you need that to be to be voted on?
You mean the list of items that listed under the development agreement for departures?
Well, I think I made a special request that the configurations of required and potential streets, and whether they're straight or they're curved, that be taken up in the development agreement.
So you're referring to the block size configuration that is currently in the code. The council did have, you'll recall, in July of 2020, a discussion about the potential streets and the required road, the one down by between the Bellevue Club and Hilton. So if you want to have a departure for block sizes, I think we probably need to come back with additional information, but certainly that would be an option to do that. I'm not quite sure how we're going to configure the space, but again, that could be within the framework of a development agreement. But there's some specific policy direction on small blocks that we need to make sure that we're also being attentive to as well.
So how are you going to deal with the request to make the width 30 feet instead of 60 feet? Where are you going to contend with that?
So that's really a development review question. So we have road standards depending upon the demand for the roads, the certain configuration for turn lanes, pedestrian, etc. Then we have critical areas codes, as you're aware, that also sometimes come in tension with what we're trying to develop. So we would be dealing with those standards together during development review. At this point in time, putting a maximum road width in a land use code generally isn't where we deal with that question. That would be part of our transportation standards. And then we would apply our development regulations over the top of that.
So it wouldn't be part of the DA as well, because that's what we're asking.
Yeah, in this particular instance, I would not recommend that we add something like that for a development agreement. That could be handled in a negotiation with the developer.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So looking at the stakeholder requests versus the staff recommendations, does anybody want to make a motion to do something different than what the staff is recommending? Councilmember Robertson?
Thanks. I think you were had some good ideas, Mayor, about allowing more flexibility. Yes, we're not going to. No city's going to allow a road standard to flex below anything that's safe or required, but there's a lot of details in this East Main overlay or district, and so I think that if we allowed other flexibility and just kept it as a catch-all within the departures, then that could be negotiated at the time. And it's not like it doesn't then come back to the council, because DAs do. So if there's a better solution that maybe gets us more affordable housing or provides better safety for ped bike, that's not strictly compliant with the land use code as we will adopt it, I'd like the opportunity for the developer and the city staff to negotiate that out. Because remember, in order to have a departure under a development agreement, it has to add more public benefit than the code as it stands at that time. So we could get a better solution with more flexibility if we add a catch-all of or other East Main standards. I wouldn't say all the standards in the land use code, but other standards in the East Main district. I would be open to that. I think that would be a good way to go. So so if people are interested, I could make that motion, but it could be for things like you stated, Mayor.
Any other comments or questions on what Councilmember Robertson? Yes, Councilmember Barksdale.
Not on what was just mentioned, but I guess just generally staffs. What was the reason for not expanding it, given that it has to come to council for approval anyway?
Let me be sure I understand your question, Councilmember Barksdale. You mean the development agreement, why it comes to council procedurally?
No, what was the reason for not opening it up per stakeholder request versus keeping it limited to max height, max FAR, non-conforming and special amenity?
And other staff can weigh in here as well. So first of all, the development agreement is something that we have elsewhere in the land use code that is usually for departures for specific areas. So it's a fairly constrained in where it is applied. We don't have a kind of a, as suggested here, this kind of a broader ability to essentially depart from the code. That creates a lot of uncertainty too. I think when you do that, there would be a significant amount of additional work if it's kind of more wide open and what can and can't be negotiated. So that's can be a good thing. It also can create some turmoil, I guess, in the process as we try to deal with the development as it's being advanced. So other staff members, as from a procedural standpoint, having a much broader development agreement option. Any thoughts, feedback for the council on that?
Hey, Mike, this is Mac. I think I'll jump in just quickly on this concept. One of the main things that the council has talked quite a bit about is predictability and transparency in what to expect in and around land use coding and districts. And the question you're asking yourselves, I think, is under what circumstances you would want to allow maximum flexibility. And you've discussed things around giving height for housing, if that's a new popular term that's being thrown out there. So the idea of setting some parameters under which you would allow deviation from the code to continue that predictability and have a very streamlined development review process from an economic development standpoint has been a pretty important concept that you've all promoted, in the past. So I think the question of what types of public benefits you would get and why you would want to open a bigger net is a question that I think you're asking yourselves right now. You've all specifically mentioned height and some of the non-conforming uses, and then specifically mentioned we'd want to get affordable housing, at least one, but some potential other benefits as well. I'm not sure through all of this, we've heard a lot about kind of a catch-all for other things in the East Main zoning code, but happy to help you through that. I think it's the predictability question that's going to be the most important here.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Robertson.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just add that the predictability is something that benefits developers because they know that what they need to do to come in and just get approved. So, and the cost of a development agreement is also paid for by the developers. So it's only in the case where a developer sees that the code is written really doesn't work for the project they want to bring, and the project they want to bring is a better outcome, and they need some flex. That's when DAs happen. And so I really am not afraid. I mean, I write a lot of DAs as a lawyer. And so I'm not really afraid of having more flexibility in East Main, because I think you can end up with a lot better outcome. And it has to, under state law, you have to have a public benefit that's better than the code as it exists. The flexibility outcome provides a public benefit that's better than the code. So I'm in favor of adding more flexibility, and I'd like to make a motion just to do so, to add flexibility to under the East Main zone. So from the East Main standards in the East Main zone under the development agreement.
Okay, that's so broad. You mean for anything, or is there something?
Anything in the East Main chapter overlay.
Okay, Councilmember Zahn. Hold on, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, I would say that we spent a long time talking about affordable housing, whether it's rental or home ownership. And I will just yet again bring up that the more we leave it completely broadly open, we dilute from the very vision that we have of the hardest things to get. So I would support a more tailored piece where if we're talking about departures that support affordable housing, rentals, or home ownership, then I'm interested in that. But if it's a broad piece about opening it to anything that comes in, then it dilutes it too much for me. Thank you.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, I agree with what Councilmember Zahn just said. I think putting it just wide open is, I think it's just an invitation to maybe another year or two of not having this project go forward. I understand what Councilmember Robertson said, but I think there's a lot of flexibility here already, special amenity, city developer negotiated public benefits. And if there's something really burning they come up with, they can come back to us. I just don't think this is the time we need to just open this up, because I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. My concern is that the developer, when they maybe find a situation where they cannot do it economically, if they don't have the flexibility, then we lose the whole opportunity of getting the amenity we want. And I believe that we all agree on what's the benefit the city going to get. We want more housing, all that stuff. And ultimately, if they don't do it, they're going to come back to us anyway, because as Councilmember Robertson said, we are the one that's going to approve it after they come back to us, negotiate. And it has to be more benefit, has to be better than what was. And so we are still in the driver's seat. The only thing is we're allowing them to have the flexibility based on the market situation, conditions of the economy, and they can do it. If we don't, they're not going to build it. We're going to sit there with a piece of empty land and nothing's happening. So we want to see it done. We want to see the benefits. Let's trust them, give them the flexibility. And if they have the conditions where they can do it, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? And that's where we can get the project, we can get our benefits, everybody's happy.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready to vote on Councilmember Robertson's motion? Councilmember Robertson?
To just add a clarifying comment. So about, in response to the comment about dilution, the benefits versus the departures. So all I'm not asking to change the public benefits, which would be the standard of affordable housing, which is, if you guys remember when we had that Crossroads DA come forward and I said, wait a second, there's no affordable housing in this as a public benefit. I don't want to move forward unless we have it. And the council supported that. So we got a better development agreement and we got some affordable housing. So the public benefits would still be affordable housing and other city developer negotiated public benefits. What my motion speaks to is the departures, because the departure list right now is very limited. And so having it be a little bit broader to other performance standards in the East Main chapter allows there to be other departures in exchange for the public benefits like affordable housing or other negotiated benefits. So if they wanted to say, bring in a whole bunch of 40% AMI housing and they wanted to move height around, or they wanted to have different block lengths, and we could decide, the council can decide after a public hearing that we think that that's a good thing. And to me, that beats having them come back and ask for a land use code amendment so we can go through this process for another 3 years. It's very specific to the project. And so I'm going to support the motion, and I hope my council colleagues will as well, because the benefits, we get to decide if it's enough of a benefit. That's totally in the council. It's just we allow the staff and the property owner to negotiate on a broader list of menu items. So thanks.
Madam Mayor, I have a clarification for the motion. I want to know, is the motion what we're looking at on the screen to have the DA items that include catalyst budgets, open space, others?
No.
No?
No, we're not talking about that.
I thought that's what the Councilmember Robertson was talking about.
No.
No? So let's hear what Councilmember Robertson.
It would allow a development agreement to have departures from the East Main, whatever you want to call it, land use code, in exchange for public benefits of affordable housing or other city developer negotiated public benefits. So it's just flexing those standards that are specific to East Main. Because I don't know what specific thing might be the thing that keeps a project from happening. And like I said, we get a better outcome because we get to decide if the public benefit is offered is adequate enough. So.
Councilmember Stokes.
I would like to hear some response from staff on that. I'm trying to get there. I think that makes some sense, but I'd just like to have a little bit more open discussion about it.
So I think it is a balancing act. It does open things up to fairly broad negotiation, which can take significant amount of time depending on what it is. So again, remembering council that DAs do, as already been mentioned, come to the council for final approval. If we have a lot of moving parts in a DA, that can be a little more challenging. But that being said, it is, we will follow whatever direction the council wishes to take on this particular topic.
Yeah, hey, Mike, I might add also, Councilmember Stokes, one thing that I am thinking about as you're all having this conversation is depending on the breadth of something that might happen in this hypothetical situation, there could be an issue with compliance with the city's comp plan. And we would need to be able to give you some advice about how that process would work should some developer come in and propose a project that eliminates a number of development standards and then makes the project non-compliant with the comp plan. Because there's always a foundational assumption that any land use code is consistent with the comp plan.
Right. Councilmember Zahn.
Yeah, I think what I am trying to understand what this means as well if we open it up this far. So I'm completely supportive if it's something that would support affordable. Can you give me some examples of what other city developer negotiated public benefits are that might also come into play that would be outside of affordable housing? Because I would not be, I'd like to understand what it is that I'm voting for.
So there's a significant amount of discretion in what's considered a public benefit, but things like affordable housing, enhancing a wetland, providing additional public space or open space, public art, there are a number of things that could be identified as public benefit. I mean, the amenities that we have listed are examples of public benefits. So it is really, there is some fairly broad discretion about that. I guess the one more, I guess, concern I would express, without any parameters around what can be negotiated, it does get to be a little tricky from the staff's perspective at deciding what is and isn't on the table from the council's perspective when we get into a negotiation like that. So having some boundaries is generally helpful, and the code normally provides those. So this is a fairly broad approach. Not out of the question that we couldn't manage it, but it would add some additional challenge.
And it might set a stage or a precedent for, as we move to other areas, opening this up as well, where we will end up having DAs that are wide open for all kinds of potential interpretation or work. So I would just say, for me, I would be supportive if we were talking about departures strictly supporting affordable housing, which is what we have spent the bulk of our time in the last few meetings talking about in this particular area.
Councilmember Robertson, would you restate your motion? Sorry, can you do that?
Yeah, I mean, and if I had a list of all the standards, I could pick and choose, but as far as expanding this, but my motion was to allow departures for the standards within the East Main chapter of the code for public benefits, such as affordable housing and other city developer negotiated public benefits. So it would allow more flexibility. And I'll just, since you asked me to speak, I'll just add one thing. And the discussion about allowing this citywide, I think we should. I think we should adopt a development agreement. I've been saying this for 6 or 8 years. I think we should adopt a development agreement chapter in the Bellevue land use code that allows flexibility, particularly for benefits like affordable housing, and allowing flexibility. And obviously, if it's not compliant with the comp plan, staff wouldn't support it. It would have a problem with SEPA, and the council wouldn't support it. So I think that that's a bit of sophistry there. But anyway, that's the content of my motion. Thank you.
And I'm going to speak to it too, because I think that I think that having that flexibility is good because I think it makes better design because your design can work with what the requirements are in a way that makes sense for the design. But I think, the public benefits part of it with the affordable housing, as long as that's defined as 80% AMI or lower, does that carry over to this? Does that definition carry over to this public benefit, or do we need to?
I believe it would. Yeah. It's what we say it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to do 60% AMI for some greater thing. Hey, I'm all over it. Let's do it. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready to take a vote? I see some hands still up, and I don't know if they're residual hands or new hands.
Do you have a second?
I just have a clarifying question.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Barksdale.
More procedurally, how easy or difficult is it to update the DA, like the list of departures in the future?
Tristan, do you want to answer that question?
It would be, Councilmember Barksdale, it would be very similar to the land use code amendments that's in front of you before, and your time during the planning commission, sort of similar to that. It would be something that would be initiated by council. Staff would develop that amendment to add or remove these certain provisions in the departures section of the development agreement section, and bring that through planning commission and potentially then back to council. So it really is, it's as straightforward or as complicated as that a normal land use code amendment process.
Okay. So
what are your Councilmember Barksdale? What are your thoughts on this proposal, this motion?
Yeah, I was thinking if it's relatively easy to update the DA, the development agreement, then we don't need to make it limitless because we can update it in the future anyway. That was my thinking.
Does that sound easy to you? What you described, is that the definition of easy?
I mean, it could be. I mean, compared to the discussions that we have as council trying to get aligned on what we want, but
hard to know. Okay, Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, just one comment on this too. I like the proposal that Councilmember Robertson put out there, but it seems to me if this is something that would be good for us to change citywide, taking a specific action on one area is kind of already having that conversation and pointing us in a direction without actually having the conversation for the city. What I'm saying is this will set a precedent, and I don't think this is not the appropriate way to set that. And if seriously we need to redo the whole code in this fashion, we should do it that way. And I don't know, it kind of bothers me. I think what we have in here in the green and for that will give them any developer ample opportunity to work this out. I mean, special, non-conforming, special amenities, all these, I think there are just a lot of things already in here, and we're just adding some language that's going to confuse it. And I think it will end up with a lot of delays just because it's there and enticing.
My only reservation is the other city developer negotiated public benefits, that part of it. I'd allow far more flexibility if it guaranteed affordable housing. I was sure that that's what I was going to get in return. Councilmember Robertson.
So I agree. I think we made it pretty clear to staff when the last DA came forward that if it didn't have affordable housing, we weren't going to do a DA. So I think that if we're going to have this be more flexible, it should be affordable housing and other city. So I think Deputy Mayor seconded my motion. If it's acceptable to him, I'll add that to my motion.
Yeah, I like that, actually.
And then to Councilmember Stokes's point, I would love to adding a whole new DA chapter to the planning work plan when that comes forward, and I will be asking the council to do that. But right now we're trying to finish East Main, so that's where we are. Thanks.
Are we ready to take a vote on this? I'm wondering if Councilmember Lee is still with us. Yes, he is.
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready to go.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
All right. All those
my
in
vote is
favor of Councilmember Robertson's motion say, I guess I'm going to have to call on you. I'm so sorry. Hold on. Let me get my little list. All right, here we go. Councilmember Stokes. I didn't hear you.
I'm trying to decide.
Okay, I'll come back to you.
Come back.
Councilmember Robertson.
Voting yes.
Councilmember Zahn.
No.
Councilmember Barksdale.
No.
Me, yes. Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Stokes.
No.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that passes 4-3. Okay, so now, is there any reason to look at the stakeholder requests?
No.
Down here, I just look at it and let me know if there's a motion to address those or not. Okay, so we'll leave this as it is. Okay, is there anything, staff, is there anything else that we have not covered that you would like us to make an official direction on?
I think you have addressed the topics that we brought forward this evening, so I appreciate the time and the direction.
Okay.
We will incorporate those into the code.
All right, thank you. All right, it is 9:28. We have the aquatics update. Mr. Miyake, is there any, I don't want to rush this, but we also, it's a long night. Is there any room in our schedule coming up to put this?
Mayor, I just checked with the clerk there. The schedule is really packed for the rest of the year. Yes.
Okay. All right, we will power through then. Why don't you introduce this one, please?
Sure. This evening, staff is going to update the council on the Bellevue Aquatic Center feasibility study, which includes a recommended concept plan, a preferred site, as well as partnership opportunities. Just by way of background, at the August 3rd, 2020 meetings, council director staff to continue work on developing the facility recommended concept plan, as well as identifying public-private partnership opportunities, recommending a preferred site, as well as identifying financial strategies. Tonight, staff seeks direction with regard to these steps. And so I'm going to turn over to Michael Shiosaki, the director, as well as Ken Kruger, our project manager of Parks and Community Services. They've been warned in advance that, time is, we are running short on time. So we'll try to get through the presentation as efficient as possible. Michael?
Great, thank you, City Manager Miyake, and good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newhouse, and members of the City Council. I'm Michael Shiosaki, and tonight we return with an update on the Aquatic Center feasibility study, and I have heard brevity is a gift here, so we will try to move through this very quickly. So next slide, please. So this evening, park staff seek direction on a preferred concept plan for the aquatics facility, a preferred site, and to talk a little bit about a partnership opportunity. So next slide, Ken. So this is the agenda. I will quickly fly through this and get into that preferred concept plan and the preferred site location, and then talk a little bit about partnership and financing, and then recommended next steps. Next slide, please. So very briefly on the background. So, Bellevue's history with public pools goes back to 1968 and the King County Forward Thrust Bond. At that point, 16 pools were built throughout the region, including Bellevue's Odal Pool. Less than half of those pools are still in operation and really are approaching the end of their typical lifespans. And a point here, no new public pools have been built in Bellevue in over 30 years. So in 2017, with renewed regional interest, including the formation of Splash Forward approached the city to advocate for aquatic needs for all East Side residents, promote interest in aquatics, and meet the regional need. In 2019, the City Council initiated the city's aquatic feasibility study update. And then in 2020, the council reviewed the initial study work. The council's desire was to go big or go home, and 3 aquatic center programs or concept options were developed with 4 potential site options up for consideration. Next slide, please. So as the city manager just mentioned, at the August 3rd, 2020 meeting, the council unanimously supported a new Bellevue Aquatic Center and desired the project maintain its forward momentum. Council asked the staff to continue to work with Splash Forward to develop a single preferred aquatics facility concept plan, identify potential private and public partnership opportunities, identify a preferred site for the aquatic facility, and develop financial strategies to support moving the project forward. And with that, I will turn over the presentation to Ken Krager to cover the preferred concept plan and the preferred site. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, as Mike was saying, that city staff and Splash Forward have worked together to develop this single unified concept plan. We're recommending a contemporary state-of-the-art facility that meets the aquatic needs of not only Bellevue's community, but all our potential partner groups in a place that promotes community health and wellness. The facility would serve full range of fitness, recreation, health and wellness, as well as the competitive aquatics program for all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. In this plan and all our future reports and development work, as we continue to evaluate the address equitable access, environmental stewardship, and the potential for partnerships always remains high on what we do. So as you've seen before in the past, the go big or go home scenario. The key program elements include the 50-meter pool with movable bulkheads, the separate deep water tank, a therapy and wellness pool, a lesson and program pool, and leisure pool amenities. While on the dry side, spaces are included to support both the aquatic programming and the community use, including cardio fitness spaces, flexible community use rooms, lobby, and spectator seating. We want to note that the spectator seating is 900 capacity in the stands and 720 on a deck. So the preferred concept plan is approximately 130,000 square feet. In today's dollars, we're estimating the project to be about 125 million, with an annual operating subsidy of 500,000 to $1 million, with a cost recovery of 82 to 91%, which is extremely high for a center and a complex of this type. Just to give you an idea, like we said before, the King County Aquatic Center's operating subsidy is about a 30 to 40% recovery. And for our preferred site, when we presented to the council previously, we were directed that the preference would be to remove 2 of the project sites at Marymoor and Lincoln Center. And the preference was the new facility would be either at Bellevue College or Bellevue Airfield Park, unless if there's some other identified site within the city limits that we could find. We need approximately 10 to 11 acres for a development of this size for an aquatic center. An available acquisition property opportunities large enough to support this kind of facility have been reviewed, but the cost of the property and limited parcels in the market of this size have made acquisition the costliest and least preferred option. And staff has been working with Bellevue College on a regular basis throughout the past year, and we've been trying to come up with a partnership with Bellevue College. The college site offers potential opportunities of access and a prominent location off of I-90 that's served well by public transportation. Although the college program requirements of a gym and structured parking add an estimated $14 million in additional capital costs to develop at the college campus compared to that of the Airfield Park. So given that the significant additional capital costs for the college site, staff has identified the Bellevue Airfield Park as the preferred site. The site is large enough at 27 acres to completely incorporate the new aquatic center. And we've been working with our engineering and master planning teams to refine our cost premiums associated with the landfill and making the Airfield Park the most economically feasible choice. So I was saying the site is large enough to have the preferred concept plan, and the parking can be met in combination of new and on-site parking by using the shared parking agreement with adjacent properties, as well as introducing and integrating the new aquatic center into the Airfield Park development could offer expanded outdoor recreational opportunities that are not located in any of the other sites. And there's still very good access from I-90. There's limited traffic impacts to the adjacent neighborhood, and there's adequate transit services in the area. With that said, I'll turn this back to Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. So moving on to potential partnerships. So we've begun the work to explore partnerships and sponsorships, both private and public agencies, to construct and operate an aquatic facility who share our common interests. Partnership development will require further work with the following groups, and this is definitely not comprehensive at this point. The Bellevue School District continues to support the city's endeavor to develop the aquatic center to help meet the needs of their competitive aquatics programs and is exploring capital funding options. Several area healthcare providers have suggested the need for more specificity about the scale, scope, timing, and location of a facility before discussing potential partnerships or contributions. The cities of Kirkland and Redmond and King County have continued to share respective interests and explore regional partnership opportunities. And there is increasing interest from competitive aquatics organizations on a new aquatic center. The project advocacy may generate additional partnership opportunities and contributions. Next slide, please. So here's a list of potential funding sources for our additional investigation. And what we do know is that it's going to take a broad base of funding sources and partners to build the facility. And we will continue to work to identify partners and additional funding sources, including a potential city contribution. So next slide, please. City staff and Splash Forward have worked to develop a single preferred concept plan that you just saw a moment ago. And we've also worked to communicate aquatics needs, concepts, and engage potential funding partners. As you've heard, Splash Forward is a nonprofit aquatic advocacy organization. The organization's mission is to provide our community with an inclusive year-round aquatic health and wellness facility with affordable access to aquatic programming so that everyone can be safe in the water, drownings are prevented, and community connections are fostered, and everyone can enjoy a lifetime of healthy lifestyle opportunities. So Splash Forward has worked closely with park staff over this past year, providing substantial contributions with their aquatic knowledge and experience. The organization is willing to partner with the city and commit to a fundraising effort to help garner the capital funding necessary to build the aquatic center preferred concept plan. Staff is recommending the city and Splash Forward develop a memorandum of understanding to capture our mutual interests. Understanding the incremental nature of setting a successful fundraising campaign in motion Splash Forward's initial efforts will be focused on a fundraising feasibility report to help understand potential fundraising options and establish a marketing and fundraising plan. Next slide, please. So staff will continue the incremental refinement of the partnership development, the program, the concept, financing options, and the project cost. The recommended next steps to help inform the city's deliberations towards determining whether and under what conditions to continue moving the project forward. Here are kind of suggested or recommended next steps. First is putting together this partnership agreement with Splash Forward, then initiating a master plan update at Bellevue Airfield Park, and in doing that, engaging the community to consider including an aquatics facility at the site. Next, contracting for architectural, engineering, and environmental services to support the master plan update. And last but not least, continuing to pursue partnerships and planning grant opportunities. Next slide, please. So with that, this evening, park staff seek direction on the preferred concept plan, the preferred site, and I'll call that Aquatic Center in a Park, and formalizing our partnership opportunity with Splash Forward. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you for the quick and salient presentation. That's perfect. Okay, let me take a look at everybody. So yeah, leave that slide up, please, so that we can look at the direction that you're asking for us. Is it up, Michael? Maybe it's just my view.
Ken, could you pull that up again?
Yeah. It's working on it.
Okay, that's fine. There you go.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So why don't we let everybody weigh in? I'm going to start with Councilmember Robertson.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have this on our agenda. And I would point out that photograph is the woman in that photograph is the first Black Olympic gold medal female swimmer for the United States. So I love that picture. She's a terrific person. And she's been really actively involved with the USA Swimming Foundation Make a Splash, which is all about making sure that people, and particularly children, are not drowning. And so I wanted to make a couple of comments before I ask questions, a couple of questions. As we get more dense, we need to make sure that we have more amenities, including things like aquatic centers and parks and trails. And as we've been focusing more on equity, and we had some public comments about that, I just wanted to share some equity data about swimming and children and drowning. 79% of children in households with incomes under $50,000 have little to no swimming ability. Research shows that 64% of African American, 45% of Hispanic, Latino, and 40% of Caucasian children have little to no swimming ability. 10 people drown in the United States every single day of the year. Formal swimming lessons is the number one way to reduce the likelihood of childhood drowning. It reduces it by 88%. And it's the number one cause of death of children under 5 and number 2 for children 5 to 14 for accidental death. I would say that most of the pools in Bellevue, except for the small Bellevue Aquatic Center, are private clubs, which are aging, outdoor, summer only for most, and can be costly to join. And many cap the total membership. They are not open and accessible to all members of the public. We have a 2-year backlog of people needing swimming lessons. And we have a lot of people, we're a majority minority city, people coming from all over the world who may not know how to swim. We live between 2 lakes, or our city is located between 2 lakes. And I don't want to see another summer where children are drowning in Bellevue. The pools that we have that are existing in Bellevue do not meet the needs of our high schools. They do not meet the needs of the club swimmers. They do not meet the needs of master swimming, let alone things like Special Olympics and Kinko champs for the high schools, and even Mid-Lakes champs, which is the local swimming summer league. So we also have a shortage of lifeguards because there's not enough space to train lifeguards, which leads to us closing facilities, and it leads to reduced safety. So I really feel very passionate about this. And let me just say, for staff's purposes, Yes on the preferred concept plan. Yes on the preferred site. Big yes on the partnership opportunity. And thank you, Splash Forward, for being such a great partner to us. We really can't run this city and make it as livable as we have and will continue to do so without partnerships like Splash Forward, without our business community, et cetera. So my questions, for the master planning process, I would like to see this be expedited. I'm wondering when it will go to the Parks Board for remaster planning. I'm hoping the answer is first quarter 2022. And then the second question is on funding, whether the $750,000 to keep this moving forward is already appropriated or whether we need to appropriate that in the mid-buy. And the one list of funding options that was not on the slide, I would look this up in the statutes today, is real estate excise tax. We've had a lot of big trades in Bellevue this year. I don't know what our real estate excise tax projection is, but we can use that for parks and rec facilities, including planning. So if we don't have the funds, I'd like to make sure that we look at that in the mid-buy if we need the funds. So Michael or whomever would, Ken, would you address my questions? So master plan timing and funding, we need to do something? And I guess those are really the two. Thanks.
So, I'd say we haven't scheduled this yet, waiting for this evening, but, I think we try to start master planning sometime early next year. I think in terms of the funding, right now I've been working with the finance director and we've been looking at options to put together that funding package. And so I think there's several options on the table and we're hoping to get that worked out really quickly. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. So will we be doing it in the mid-buy? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I'm not sure if it's going to come through the mid-buy.
We may not need it in the mid-buy. Yeah. As long as we don't have to do something to keep it moving, I'm good. I want to keep it moving as fast as Nathan Adrian can swim the 50 free. So.
Well, I'm going to call in Councilmember Stokes next because he was part of the original master planning process of Airfield Park.
Right, I appreciate that very much. And I want to just say I totally echo everything that Councilmember Robertson said. This is we've been working on this a long time. And everything you said, I agree. It's a great concept. It's a great site. And we have all kinds of partnership opportunities. And staff and other people working this has done a fantastic job. And so I'm really excited about it. And there's not much else to say except that we need to do this and move forward. I like the idea of looking into the REIT. And I did want to say that I think particularly, finding spaces and everything sometimes it's a hard thing to do. And sometimes it just kind of comes together. And this one did, because this is the place it should be. When you look at everything else, Jennifer, we just should have thought about this at first and said, okay, this is it. And I back when I was working PTSA and all, I was involved with the original Splash at that time. And that's what, 20 years ago or something. And it's just so exciting to see this. But what is exciting is this is a fantastic proposal and something we can do, because when we were first looking at these, we saw little cities smaller than us doing these big things, and it was kind of well, we can't do that, but we can have a larger pool. So getting to this is really great. And I totally agree, as I said, that Airfield Park is the place to be in this. And remember, we called it Airfield Park because there was an airfield close by. And when it finally it's put together, and I don't know if they put the sign up yet, but one of the reasons we wanted to do this, particularly because there was a female woman pilot who was one of the pioneer women pilots in the country, and she flew out of there. So it has a lot of history there, and it's located. It's not hinged, kind of closed in or anything, and this plus. What is really good is there is space beside that for people to do things outside and for people to come and have events outside. It's not taking the whole park over. It's not intruding and there are ways to handle the crowds and everything, not intruding on the neighborhood. It's just kind of like it's tailor made, and this was meant to happen. And as I said at the very beginning, when we talked on this, my favorite motto is "Go big or go home," and this is one that we are going to go big. So I'm excited about it. It's nice to have something like this towards the end of the year and be ready to go for the next year. So I'm all in.
That pilot that you referenced, her dad owned the airfield.
Oh yeah,
and she was a flight instructor during World War II, and I think she raised her family in Viewcrest.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor.
Lynn you were on the Parks Board too.
I was. That's right.
Anytime.
I'll speak to that when it's my turn. Deputy
Thank
Mayor.
you, Mayor. I'll just echo my colleagues there just quickly. But first, Michael and Ken, thanks for the great presentation. Absolutely love the plan, the site, and the opportunity here. So nothing but love for the project, and happy to move this forward. This is going to be something special for Bellevue, and I'm so proud to be a part of it right now. This is going to be really, really special. So thank you.
Great. Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think it's an exciting time for a state-of-the-art aquatic center. Love the motto, water for all, water for life. And I appreciate Splash Forward for your continual efforts and partnership. And I also understand the anxiousness of the team to get going and make progress. And as my fellow colleagues have talked about, to go big. I am completely on board with the concept plan. In talking to staff, it sounds like this is the medium size that we had talked about when the concepts came. It was kind of the small, medium, large. So that was my understanding. I did have a question about the recommended site, and maybe without the history some colleagues talked about, I don't completely understand. Because when I think about a project of this size, I'm not sure I completely understand what happened with Bellevue College and why that was a site that we chose not to continue discussion and negotiation with. And the main reason I'm asking this question is because when I think about accessibility and transportation choices to get to Airfield Park and transit as a regional place where we're going to have lots of swimmers coming, I'm just trying to understand how accessible the location really is, especially from an equity standpoint of folks that may not be coming in by car. So can you help me understand what happened with Bellevue College? It seemed like that was a location that would have been right next to where light rail was going to be coming in. It has great transit. We've been talking about a Bellevue College connection that would make that even easier and accessible to get to. So I just have about that. So for me, completely supportive of the preferred plan and the partnership and an MOU with Splash Forward for looking at fundraising feasibility plan, refining the finances and the operating plan, applying for planning grants. The location is the one that I'm just, somehow I think I'm missing a couple of dots and how we got to this point.
Sure, I'd be happy to address
Michael,
that.
sorry, before you answer that, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask the Deputy Mayor to make a motion to extend the meeting. So you have more time to talk.
I move to extend the meeting to 10:15.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, go ahead.
Sure, and I will try to be brief again. You know, I'd say, Councilmember Zahn, that we spent over a year in monthly meetings with the college, and I think we both came into it very open-minded about the potentials of the Bellevue College site. I would say you're right, the slightly better transit access and visibility. I think, though, in having slightly different missions in terms of Parks and Recreation and the city being more focused on fitness and recreation and overall health and wellness, the college's mission is probably focused more, obviously, on education. And I think when it came down to it, you know, their needs for future growth related to that educational mission probably drove the issue of keeping them whole on parking. So in other words, we would then need to build a significant parking garage that comes with a significant price tag, along with meeting some of their needs for things like a gymnasium as a part of it that just continued to add to costs that we wouldn't have at the site at Airfield Park, where I'll say, for the most part, we control our destiny a bit more than at the college site. I think you also heard about some of the synergies between indoor and outdoor, and actually having the aquatic center in a park really is a positive in terms of the potential activities that can all happen there, rather than us having an aquatic center really amongst parking.
Okay. I'm not sure I am. I'm still concerned about the transportation access and the accessibility of that if you're not a car. Thank you.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Wow, this is something that's coming in a long time. When I first got to the council, we have a council member, Chris Seaton. I think she's a very early person that started Splash. I remember the name is also Splash. So I'm really glad that because of the merit of the project and the insistence of a lot of people supporting it, it's continued. And the timing is right. When everybody is, when King County is getting rid of the swimming pool, and they want to get rid of the outdoor pool, and and Bellevue took on it, and we took on the cost of maintaining it. We turned into a very wonderful amenity, service for our people who need it. Warm water too means for people who have medical conditions, and young people can use it. So it has proven to be very, very beneficial. Of course, that's used for a different purpose. So I believe that we are at the point, we have grown, we have become world-class. And I think with the need and have been articulated by, almost everybody, that it's time for something like this in our region. We have a federal way that swimming pool, but that's way out there, and that's where we've developed a lot of talents. I think that's all good stuff. I appreciate the staff have gone to all the detail and all that, and I believe that the concept we have now is a very good one. And the question I have is, the cost. I heard that the Bellevue College versus Airfield Park, and because the initial reason is what costs too much money, and so when you look at the site, somebody actually at the beginning of the meeting suggested because it used to be a landfill and all that, it may have some considerations of whether the cost would be what we anticipated to be. How do they compare? So I would like to have the staff take a better look at, the condition of the site and whatnot, and perhaps we can make some decisions comparing to what we have to do to make Bellevue College site workable. Right now, the way it is, I agree, because it's different mission. If that is the case, I think, then that's a good point to make to us, to everybody, that because it's different mission, it may not be appropriate, and the cost might not be the primary driver. Right? If that's the case, then yes, I would think it's a very, very good consideration. But if it's the cost which is used as the reason why we pick one over the other, then I'd like to know a little bit more about the cost. And I also thought that the Councilmember Zahn's point of who are the client we'll be serving? Well, that's another consideration. I don't know, I haven't heard. I think that the staff might want to look into that a little bit more, right? So there's a number of things perhaps we need to have a little bit more detailed information. But I definitely like the concept. I like the way it's designed. I like the concept of, talking about the sports being the universal activity that being put together. We just had the Olympics over, and I have, you know, completely touted about sports bringing people together. Nobody talk about, you know, whatever they come from, what their background is, what color they are. You know, it's just doing the best they can, and everybody's together. I think this is a good thing.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee.
Yeah, but I do like to get those questions answered, and I like the way it is. And let's do a little bit more about the reason for picking up the sites.
Would you like me to address that now?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So, you know, I would say, Councilmember Lee, that it's based on both of those, that there are slightly different missions, but the cost differential also plays into it. I think over the past year, since we last came to the council in August, part of what we did in coming back with a preferred site was look at some of the cost premiums that go along with building an aquatic center at or near a landfill. And so even with the cost premiums, so the additional costs, we've had more engineering study done over the past year, the Bellevue site is still less expensive by about $14 million. And so, yeah, that's what we've spent the last year working on. And so I think it is based both on the slightly different missions and, you know, hard dollars and cents, quite honestly.
Good. Well, I'm glad you looked at it, you know, considered it. And, you know, so if the numbers prove it, and if it's whatever that makes sense, you know, then I think the decision would be obvious. So thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Really excited about this, and also appreciate the team integrating equity more deeply into their concept plan. In terms of Councilmember Zahn's point, in terms of access to the location, and given that we're looking at partnerships, I have a couple of questions. One related to access. Is there an opportunity to partner with, say, King County Transit to provide more frequent transit between the Eastgate Park and Ride and the site? And then secondly, and has that conversation happened? And then secondly, is the way I kind of see this, and let me know if I'm wrong here, is this is kind of like the relationship we have with Arch or the Together Center, in that we provide some funding, but the majority of funding will come from partners. Where's that, if I'm wrong about that, where's that line between how much we put in versus, say, I mean, this is a regional asset too, so versus, say, maybe other cities or other organizations?
So first, the transit issue, we haven't reached out to King County Metro, but we can certainly do that. I think we've heard access, and we realize access is a big issue in terms of equity. So we will definitely reach out to King County Metro on that. In terms of, excuse me, the percentage of funds, I think we're still figuring that out. I think, you know, King County has money designated in their parks levy for aquatics facilities, so we'll definitely be hitting up the county. We'll also be looking at the school district for funds in terms of kind of the public side. And then I think we're definitely, that's why in part we're working with Splash Forward, is they are going to really help us kind of on the private side in fundraising. So it's really going to need to be a broad base of different funding sources to bring this all together.
Got it. Yeah, I think, so will that be part of the MOU then, sort of that cost sharing percentage, and maybe something like a tiered approach where it's like some percentage comes from outside the city and some percentages?
You know, I think there are going to be some overall targets and goals within that MOU with Splash Forward, yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm interested in that. Thank you.
So, Michael, I like the preferred concept plan. I like the preferred site, and I like the partnership opportunity. You know, as Councilmember Stokes said, he and I were both involved in the original master planning for that site. And there were some things that were really important to the community at that time that I would hate to get rid of. And I remember, you know, they wanted the trees to be maintained and the forested pathways. and to have some, you know, wild grass with a bench where you could sit and just relax and not have it all structured. So I hope that some of those values can be maintained as we think about siting this. And Airfield Park, the original proposal from staff was to have an aquatic facility there. So it's nice that it gets another chance, because I, for one, didn't realize how important that was for the community, and I do now. So I do support this. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move to direct staff to develop a memorandum of understanding to partner with Splash Forward for fundraising efforts and to continue moving the project forward using the Bellevue Airfield Park as the preferred site, including conducting SEPA environmental review and updating the master plan for Bellevue Airfield Park through a community engagement process.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, that passes. And that is the end of this very long meeting. I want to thank everybody so much for the good conversation, very thoughtful, and a lot of good things talked about tonight. And I will see you in just a moment. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.